Sometimes the person you save becomes the one who destroys you,
It is.
or the one who makes you whole. Noah Bennett pulled a dying woman from a burning wreck and vanished without a trace. 2 years later, she found him, a billionaire CEO hiding behind a fake name in his small-town garage. She wanted to thank him. Instead, she fell in love with his daughter, lied to them both, and shattered the fragile life he'd built. When his child's heart stopped beating in a roadside diner, the woman he'd sworn to hate became the only one who could save her. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fog came down like a burial shroud that October morning. Noah Bennett's hands gripped the steering wheel of his pickup truck, knuckles white against the cracked leather, eyes fixed on the two-lane highway cutting through the forests outside Willow Creek. The radio played some forgotten country song about lost love and whiskey, but he wasn't listening. He was thinking about brake pads, about the overdue electric bill sitting on his kitchen counter, about whether Ellie had remembered to pack her geography homework in that pink backpack she refused to replace, even though the zipper was broken. He was thinking about all the small, grinding details of survival that filled a widower's mind at 6:30 in the morning. He wasn't thinking about saving anyone's life. The wreck appeared like a nightmare materializing from mist, a sleek black sedan wrapped around an oak tree, hood crumpled like paper, smoke beginning to curl from beneath the twisted metal. Noah's foot hit the brake before his mind fully processed what he was seeing. The pickup lurched to a stop on the shoulder, gravel spraying. For one terrible second, he sat frozen. He thought about Ellie waiting at home, about how she'd already lost one parent, about what would happen to an 8-year-old girl if her father died trying to play hero on a foggy highway. Then he saw the hand. Pale fingers, motionless, draped over the steering wheel inside the wreck. Noah was out of the truck before the thought finished forming. The driver's side door was jammed, metal bent inward from impact. Through the spider-webbed glass he could see her, a woman, maybe late 30s, dressed in what had once been an expensive coat, now torn and dark with blood. Her head rested against the deflated airbag. Blood ran from a gash above her eyebrow, tracking down her temple, pooling in the hollow of her collarbone. She wasn't moving. "Ma'am?" Noah's voice came out rough. He pounded on the window. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. The smoke was getting thicker. Noah ran back to his truck, grabbed the tire iron from behind the seat, and returned to the wreck. The fog swallowed sound. The world felt suspended, dreamlike, as he swung the iron bar against the passenger window once, twice, 3 times. Glass exploded inward with a sound like breaking ice. He reached through, unlocked the door, wrenched it open. The smell hit him immediately. Gasoline, hot metal, something chemical and wrong. His mechanic's brain screamed warnings about fuel lines and sparks, and the thin line between smoke and fire. "Come on," Noah muttered, climbing half into the car. "Come on, stay with me." The woman's seatbelt had locked on impact. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. Noah found the release, pressed it, caught her weight as she slumped sideways. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe adrenaline made her seem that way. He got one arm under her shoulders, another beneath her knees, and pulled her free of the wreckage. 50 feet from the car, he laid her on the grass. Her eyes flickered open, just for a moment, dark eyes, unfocused, staring up at him like he was something she couldn't quite comprehend. Her lips moved. No sound came out. "Don't try to talk," Noah said. He shrugged out of his jacket, pressed it against the wound on her head. "You're going to be okay. Just stay with me." Behind them, the sedan's engine made a sound like a dying animal. Noah looked back. The smoke had turned black. He scooped the woman into his arms again and ran. He got her into the passenger seat of his pickup, made sure she was breathing, then drove like hell toward County General. The hospital was 20 minutes away on a good day. Noah made it in 12, the old Ford's engine screaming protest, his heart hammering against his ribs. The emergency room doors slid open. A nurse looked up from her station, saw the blood-covered woman in Noah's arms, and shouted for a gurney. Everything became chaos. Voices, hands, fluorescent lights, the squeak of rubber wheels on linoleum. They took her from him. Someone pressed a clipboard into Noah's hands, asking questions he couldn't answer. Name? Unknown. Age, maybe 40. Insurance? No idea. Relation to patient? None. Sir, we need... I found her on Highway 14, Noah said. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Car versus tree. She needs help. Sir, if you could just... But Noah was already walking toward the exit. He'd done what he could. The professionals had her now. And somewhere in Willow Creek, his daughter was probably eating cereal alone at the kitchen table, wondering why her father was late. Noah Bennett walked out of County General Hospital the same way he'd walked through the last 3 years of his life, quietly, without fanfare, leaving no trace that mattered. He didn't give his name. He didn't wait for gratitude. He just left. The woman's name was Vivian Sterling, though Noah wouldn't learn that for a long time. When she woke 3 days later in a private recovery suite at Manhattan Presbyterian, transferred by air ambulance once she'd been stabilized, because that's what happened to people worth $3 billion, the first thing she felt was pain. The second thing was fury. Fury at her own weakness, at the deer that had leapt into the road, at the driver who'd convinced her to take that meeting in person instead of handling it remotely, at the universe for reminding her that money couldn't rewrite physics or prevent a luxury sedan from meeting an oak tree at 60 miles per hour. Miss Sterling. The doctor stood at her bedside, young, competent, maddeningly calm. You're very lucky to be alive. Vivian touched the bandage on her forehead, felt the dull ache radiating through her skull. I don't feel lucky. But Marsan, you suffered a severe concussion, 3 fractured ribs, and significant blood loss. If you'd remained in that vehicle another 5 minutes. The doctor didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Who brought me in? Vivian's voice came out rough, throat raw from intubation. A man. No name given. The staff at County General said he left before they could get any information. We're trying to locate him, but find him, Vivian said. It wasn't a request. Over the following weeks, as her body healed and her empire continued spinning under the temporary leadership of her COO, Vivian became obsessed with a question that had no easy answer. Who was he? The security footage from County General showed only a tall man in a worn jacket carrying her through the emergency room doors, his face mostly obscured by the camera angle and the blood on his shirt. No license plate had been recorded. No witnesses had come forward. He'd appeared like a ghost and vanished the same way, but he'd left something behind. Vivian's assistant found it when they returned her personal effects. A carpenter's pencil, old and worn, tucked into the folds of her ruined coat. It must have slipped from his pocket when he'd carried her. Most people would have thrown it away. Vivian kept it in her desk drawer and looked at it every day. Because in her world, a world of contracts and transactions, of calculated risks and negotiated outcomes, nobody ever did anything for nothing. Nobody saved a stranger's life and walked away without wanting something in return. Yet, he had. And that single act of inexplicable decency haunted her more than the crash itself. Noah Bennett's world was smaller than Vivian Sterling's, but no less complete. It consisted of 3 things. Bennett Auto Works, a 2-bay garage on the edge of Willow Creek that smelled like oil and old coffee. His daughter Ellie, who was 8 years old and carried sadness like a coat she couldn't take off. And the memory of his wife Sarah, who died 3 years earlier and taken all the easy joy with her. The garage sat on a corner lot between a hardware store and a defunct real estate office. The sign out front was hand-painted, fading. Inside, country music played from a radio held together with electrical tape, and the floor was clean even when nothing else was. Noah took pride in that. The cleanliness, the honesty of the work, the fact that people trusted him with their vehicles, and he never betrayed that trust. It didn't make him rich, but it kept food on the table. Dad? Noah looked up from the transmission he was rebuilding to find Ellie standing in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already coming loose. Hey kiddo, how was school? Fine. She wandered over to the workbench, set down her backpack, pulled out a sketchbook. Mrs. Patterson says I need to pick a project for the art fair. Yeah, what are you thinking? Ellie shrugged, flipping through pages covered in pencil drawings. Trees, houses, the stray cat that lived behind the diner, her own small hands holding a coffee cup. She drew the way some kids breathed constantly and without thinking about it. Sarah had been an artist too. Not professionally, she'd worked as a nurse, practical and steady, but in all the ways that mattered. She'd seen the world in color and light, had taught their daughter to see it the same way. Noah saw it in brake pads and oil changes. Sometimes he wondered if that made him a bad father. Maybe the old bridge, Ellie said quietly. The one by Miller's farm? That's a good one. Lots of character. Ellie nodded, but didn't look convinced. She settled onto the stool by the workbench and started sketching while Noah returned to the transmission. They worked in comfortable silence, the radio playing softly, afternoon light slanting through the garage's open bay door. This was Noah's life now. Small moments, quiet routine. The careful management of grief that never quite healed but could at least be survived. He didn't dream about more than this. He didn't think he had the right to. Dad? Do you think Mom would have been proud of my drawings? The question hit like a wrench to the sternum. Noah set down his tools, wiped his hands on a rag, and crossed to where his daughter sat. He crouched beside her stool so they were eye level. Your mom would have been so proud of you she wouldn't have known what to do with herself, he said. She'd probably have cried, happy crying, the kind she used to do when you did something amazing. Ellie's eyes got bright. She blinked hard, looked back down at her sketchbook. I miss her, she whispered. I know, baby. Me too. What Noah didn't say, I'm terrified I'm not enough for you. I'm terrified you'll grow up and realize your father was just a mechanic who never knew how to make you smile the way she did. Instead, he kissed the top of her head and went back to work. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over Willow Creek, painting the garage in shades of amber and rust. Somewhere in Manhattan, a billionaire CEO was staring at a carpenter's pencil and trying to find a ghost, and neither of them knew that their worlds were about to collide. 2 years passed. Noah didn't think about the woman from the wreck. He'd compartmentalized it the way he compartmentalized everything painful or complicated, filed it away in a mental drawer labeled Things I Can't Change, and moved on. Ellie turned 10. The garage stayed afloat. The bills got paid mostly. Noah learned to braid hair and cook meals that didn't come from a box. He attended parent-teacher conferences, chaperoned field trips, sat through school concerts where Ellie played recorder badly and beamed like she'd performed at Carnegie Hall. Life continued, small and steady. But Vivian Sterling had not forgotten. For 2 years, she'd tried. She'd thrown herself back into her work, expanding her design empire into new markets, launching product lines, crushing competitors. She dated a venture capitalist for 6 months, a relationship that felt like a corporate merger and ended just as coldly. She'd bought a penthouse in Paris, a villa in Tuscany, a beach house in Malibu. None of it quieted the question. Who was he? Her investigators had found nothing. The trail was too cold, the information too sparse. A man in a pickup truck, somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, who'd disappeared into the fog. It should have been impossible to find him. But Vivian Sterling had built an empire by refusing to accept impossible. She hired a different kind of investigator, a forensic accountant who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. She gave him everything: the carpenter's pencil, the hospital footage, the approximate time and location of the crash, the make and model of the pickup truck half visible in the security video. Find him, she said. I don't care how long it takes. It took 14 months. When the investigator finally called with a name and address, Vivian was in a board meeting discussing third-quarter projections. She excused herself, walked to her office, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Noah Bennett, age 37, owner of Bennett Auto Works, Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, widower, father to Ellie Bennett, age 10. Vivian stared at the file for a long time. Then she made a decision that would change everything. Vadak. She arrived in Willow Creek on a Thursday afternoon in early autumn. Not as Vivian Sterling, CEO, billionaire, woman whose face occasionally appeared in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. As Claire Monroe, nobody, a traveler passing through. She'd traded her tailored suits for jeans and a simple sweater, left the diamonds and the designer handbags in New York, wore her dark hair loose instead of pulled back in the severe style her board expected, rented a modest sedan instead of arriving by private car. The transformation was more than cosmetic. It was psychological. For the first time in decades, Vivian Sterling allowed herself to be ordinary. Bennett Auto Works looked exactly like the photographs, small, honest, unassuming. A hand-painted sign, 2 garage bays, an old pickup truck parked out front. Vivian, Claire, pulled her rental car into the lot, killed the engine, and sat for a moment, heart hammering. This is insane, she thought. What are you even doing? But she already knew the answer. She'd spent 2 years wondering about the man who'd saved her life and asked for nothing. Wondering if decency like that still existed in the world, or if she'd imagined it in the haze of trauma and blood loss. She needed to know. Not as a CEO, not as a Sterling, as a person. Vivian got out of the car. A bell chimed as she pushed open the garage's side door. Inside, the smell of motor oil and old coffee wrapped around her like a blanket. Country music played from a radio. A man stood at a workbench, bent over an engine block, his back to her. "Be right with you," he called without turning around. "No rush," Vivian said. The man straightened, grabbed a rag, wiped his hands. When he turned around, Vivian's breath caught. He looked older than the hospital security footage, lines carved deeper around his eyes. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of quiet strength that came from years of physical labor. Dark hair going gray at the temples, eyes the color of worn denim. He looked tired and kind. "Help you with something?" Noah said. Vivian had rehearsed this moment 100 times. Every version evaporated. "My car's making a noise," she heard herself say. "Kind of a knocking sound when I accelerate?" Noah nodded, already moving toward the door. "Let's take a look." He was professional, methodical, popped the hood, listened to the engine, asked a few questions about when the noise started and whether she'd noticed anything else unusual. His hands moved with practiced confidence, checking hoses, belts, fluid levels. "Your serpentine belt's getting worn," he said after a few minutes. "That's probably what you're hearing. I can replace it today if you've got time. Otherwise, you'll want to get it done pretty soon." "Today works," Vivian said. "What do I owe you?" Noah quoted a price that was absurdly reasonable. In Manhattan, the labor alone would have cost 3 times that. "That's fine," she said. "Give me about 45 minutes. There's a diner next door if you want coffee." "Actually," Vivian hesitated, "would it be okay if I waited here? I've got some work I can do." Noah shrugged. "Sure. There's a chair by the radio if you want it." And just like that, Vivian Sterling, Claire Monroe, settled into a metal folding chair in a small-town garage and watched the man who'd saved her life work on her car. He moved efficiently, no wasted motion, didn't make small talk, didn't try to upsell her on services she didn't need, just did the job, cleaned up his workspace, and wiped down the engine bay when he finished. It was the most honest transaction Vivian had experienced in years. "All set," Noah said, lowering the hood. "You're good to go." Vivian stood, reached for her purse. "Thank you, The side door opened. A girl walked in, backpack over her shoulder, dark hair in a braid. She stopped when she saw Vivian, eyes widening slightly. "Sorry, Dad, didn't know you had a customer." "It's okay, Elle, just finishing up." Ellie, the daughter. Vivian saw Sarah in her immediately, the delicate features, the artist's hands, the old sadness living behind young eyes. But she saw Noah too, in the set of her jaw, the careful way she observed the world. "Hi," Vivian said softly. "I'm Claire." "Ellie." The girl gave a small wave, then looked at her father. "I'm going to do homework in the office." "Sounds good." Ellie disappeared through a doorway at the back of the garage. Vivian found herself smiling. "She seems lovely," she said. Something shifted in Noah's expression, subtle, protective. "She is." Vivian paid for the repair, added a generous tip that Noah tried to refuse. She got in her car, started the engine, and should have driven away. Instead, she found herself asking, "Is there a decent place to stay around here? I'm thinking of sticking around for a few days." Noah considered this. Miller's Inn, about 2 miles north, clean rooms, reasonable rates. "Thanks." Vivian drove away slowly, watching Bennett Auto Works disappear in her rearview mirror. She told herself she'd stay 1 night, maybe 2. She'd get closure, satisfy her curiosity, then go back to New York and the empire that needed her. But as she checked into Miller's Inn and unpacked her single suitcase, Vivian Sterling knew she was lying to herself. She wasn't here for closure. She was here because for the first time in her carefully constructed life, She'd met someone who didn't want anything from her, and she had no idea what to do with that. Vivian returned to the garage 3 days later with a fabricated problem, a taillight she'd deliberately loosened. Noah fixed it in 10 minutes, charged her almost nothing. She came back the following week, the week after that, each time with some small issue, a loose gas cap, windshield wipers that needed replacing, an oil change. Noah never questioned it, never gave any indication he recognized her from 2 years ago, covered in blood on a foggy highway. To him, she was just Claire Monroe, a woman passing through Willow Creek who seemed to have uncommonly bad luck with her rental car. But Ellie started to notice. "The lady's back again," she told her father one afternoon, watching through the office window as Vivian pulled into the lot. Noah said, focused on an invoice. "That's like the 4th time this month. Some people are hard on their cars." Ellie gave him a look that was far too knowing for a 10-year-old. "Or maybe she just likes talking to you." Noah's head came up. "What?" But Ellie had already grabbed her sketchbook and wandered into the garage, leaving her father to sit with that uncomfortable observation. The truth was more complicated than Ellie guessed. Vivian didn't come back because she was interested in Noah romantically, or at least that's what she told herself. She came back because Willow Creek felt like stepping into another universe, one where people said hello on the street, where the diner served coffee in chipped mugs and nobody asked what you did for a living, where a man could save a stranger's life and consider it just the right thing to do. And she came back because of Ellie. The girl carried her sketchbook everywhere, drawing constantly during her father's lunch break while waiting for customers to arrive, in the quiet hours of late afternoon when the garage was empty. Vivian recognized real talent when she saw it. She'd built a career on identifying exceptional craftsmanship and beauty. Ellie Bennett had something rare. "What are you working on?" Vivian asked one day, finding the girl at the folding chair while Noah worked under a lifted sedan. Ellie glanced up, hesitant. "Just stuff." "Can I see?" A long pause. Then Ellie held out the sketchbook. Vivian took it carefully, like it was made of glass. She flipped through pages of graphite and charcoal, landscapes, portraits, the garage rendered in loving detail. There was a maturity to the work that shouldn't have been possible in someone so young. "Ellie," Vivian breathed, "these are extraordinary." The girl's cheeks colored. "They're okay." "No, they're not okay. They're exceptional." Vivian looked up from the sketchbook. "Have you ever had formal training?" "Like art classes? There's one at school, but..." Ellie shrugged. "Dad can't really afford the extra stuff right now." Something in Vivian's chest twisted painfully. She thought about her own childhood, private tutors, conservatory programs, every door opened by money she'd done nothing to earn. She'd squandered most of it, too busy building an empire to appreciate the artistry she'd been born into. This girl had genuine gift and no resources to develop it. The unfairness made Vivian angry in a way she hadn't felt in years. "What if I brought you some supplies?" she heard herself say. "I have a friend in New York who works with a gallery. Sometimes they get samples, high-quality paper, professional pencils, stuff they can't sell because the packaging is damaged." Ellie's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? If your dad says it's okay." From under the sedan, Noah's voice carried across the garage. "Says what's okay?" Vivian stood, crossed to where Noah worked, crouched down so she could see his face in the shadows beneath the vehicle. "I'd like to bring Ellie some art supplies," she said. "Nothing expensive, just things a friend would normally throw away." Noah studied her, eyes careful. "Why?" It was a fair question. Vivian scrambled for an answer that wouldn't reveal too much. "Because she has a gift," Vivian said simply. "And gifts like that shouldn't go to waste." For a long moment, Noah didn't respond. Then, "If it's really just samples you'd throw away anyway, I guess that'd be all right." Vivian smiled. "Thank you." She stood, returned to Ellie, promised to bring supplies the following weekend. As she drove away from Bennett Auto Works that afternoon, Vivian made a call to one of the art directors at a gallery her company worked with. Had them overnight a package to Miller's Inn, professional-grade colored pencils, heavyweight drawing paper, portable watercolor sets, brushes, everything a young artist could want. It cost more than Noah probably made in a month. Vivian told herself it didn't matter. Told herself this was just a kindness, nothing more. But somewhere deep down, she knew the truth. She was starting to care. About the girl with her mother's sadness and her father's quiet strength. About the man who fixed cars with honest hands and asked for nothing in return. About a life that wasn't hers, but felt more real than anything waiting back in Manhattan. And that terrified her, because Vivian Sterling's entire existence was built on a foundation of control. She controlled her company, her image, her relationships. She'd spent decades constructing walls between herself and anything that could hurt her. Willow Creek was dismantling those walls with alarming speed, and she had no idea how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. The package arrived at Miller's Inn on a gray Saturday morning, delivered by a courier who looked mildly confused to be making a drop in a town this small. Vivian signed for it, carried the box up to her room, and spent an hour carefully removing price tags and repackaging everything to look like cast-offs from a gallery's storage room. She was getting good at lying. The thought sat uncomfortably in her chest as she drove to Bennett Auto Works that afternoon. The garage was closed for the weekend, but she'd seen Noah and Ellie there on Saturdays before, catching up on work, or simply spending time together. Sure enough, the old pickup was parked out front, and through the open bay door she could see Ellie sitting on her usual stool, sketchbook in lap. Vivian got out of the car, retrieved the carefully prepared box from the trunk, and walked into the garage. "Knock, knock," she called. Ellie looked up, face brightening. Noah emerged from the office, wiping his hands on a rag, expression cautious but not unfriendly. "Claire," he said, "wasn't expecting you today." "I know. I'm sorry to interrupt. Vivian held up the box. "The supplies came in. Thought Ellie might want them." The girl slid off her stool so fast she nearly dropped her sketchbook. "Really?" "Really." Vivian set the box on the workbench, opened it. "Let's see what we've got here." The way Ellie's face transformed when she saw the contents made every lie worth it. Her hands hovered over the colored pencils like she was afraid they'd disappear if she touched them. She picked up the watercolor set with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. "This is..." Ellie's voice came out small, awed. "This is too much." "It's nothing," Vivian said. "Like I said, just things my friend couldn't sell." Noah had moved closer, studying the supplies with the same careful attention he gave to engine problems. Vivian could see him doing calculations, estimating cost, trying to figure out if this was charity disguised as kindness. "These look pretty new for damaged goods," he said quietly. Vivian met his eyes. "Gallery storage is climate-controlled. Things keep." It wasn't technically a lie, it just wasn't the truth either. Noah held her gaze for a long moment, then looked at his daughter's shining face and made a decision. "What do you say, Elle?" "Thank you," Ellie breathed, looking at Vivian like she'd handed her the moon. "Thank you so much." "You're welcome. I can't wait to see what you create with them." What Vivian didn't expect was the hug. Ellie crossed the space between them and wrapped her arms around Vivian's waist, squeezing tight. For a moment, Vivian stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Then her arms came up, tentative, and she hugged the girl back. When Ellie pulled away, her eyes were bright with tears. "Sorry," she said, swiping at her face. Nobody's ever..." She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Noah's expression had gone carefully neutral, but Vivian could see something working behind his eyes. Concern, maybe. Or the first stirrings of suspicion. "Why don't you take those up to the house?" he told Ellie gently. "Start organizing them." "Okay." Ellie gathered the supplies like they were treasure, shot Vivian one more grateful smile, and disappeared through the office door that led to the small house behind the garage, leaving Vivian alone with Noah for the first time. The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable. "That was kind of you," Noah said finally. "But you didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." "Why?" The question was direct, unadorned. It demanded a real answer. Vivian chose her words carefully. "But because I see what you probably see every day, that she's talented, really talented, and talent like that deserves a chance to grow." "Even in a kid you barely know?" "Especially in a kid I barely know," Vivian said. "Sometimes the best kindnesses are the ones we give without expecting anything back." Something flickered across Noah's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. He looked at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. "You're not really just passing through, are you?" he said. Vivian's heart kicked hard against her ribs. "What makes you say that?" You've been in Willow Creek for 3 weeks, staying at Miller's Inn, which is cheap, but not that cheap. Your car's had more problems in 3 weeks than most cars have in a year. And now you're bringing my daughter art supplies because your friend in New York just happened to have extras. He wasn't accusatory, just observant, and that made it worse. Vivian scrambled for a response that wouldn't shatter everything. Maybe I just needed somewhere quiet for a while, somewhere that isn't New York. What are you running from? The question landed like a physical blow. What makes you think I'm running from anything? Vivian asked, aiming for light and missing. Noah shrugged. Takes one to know one, I guess. And there it was. The first real honesty between them. Vivian wanted to tell him everything. About the crash. About searching for him. About the carpenter's pencil that still lived in her desk drawer 3,000 miles away. About how she'd built an empire but couldn't build a life. And how his daughter's smile made her feel something she'd almost forgotten existed. Instead, she said, "Sometimes you don't know what you're running from until you stop running." Noah nodded slowly, like that made sense to him. Fair enough. Can I ask you something? Vivian said. Shoot. Does she have anyone? Besides you, I mean. Family? Friends her age? Noah's jaw tightened. Her mom's parents moved to Florida after Sarah died. We talk on holidays. My folks passed when I was young. She's got friends at school, but he trailed off, looked toward the house. She doesn't let people in easy. After her mom, she just closed up. Like she was afraid to love anything too much in case it left. Vivian's throat felt tight. That's a terrible burden for a child. Yeah. Noah's voice was rough. It is. For what it's worth, Vivian said quietly, I think you're doing an incredible job with her. Noah looked at her then, really looked, and Vivian saw the exhaustion he carried, the weight of being enough for a child who'd already lost too much. Most days I'm pretty sure I'm failing her, he admitted. You're not. You've known us for 3 weeks. 3 weeks is long enough to see how she looks at you, how safe she feels here. That doesn't come from failure, Noah. That comes from love. His name slipped out without permission. She'd been careful to avoid using it, afraid that speaking it aloud would reveal too much. But now it hung in the air between them, intimate and dangerous. Noah noticed. She could see it in the way his eyes narrowed slightly, processing. How do you know my name? He asked. I never introduced myself. Vivian's mind raced. It's on the sign, Bennett Auto Works. That's my last name. Ellie called you Noah once. I must have remembered. Another lie. They were piling up like stones, building a wall she'd never be able to climb over. Noah studied her for a moment longer, then seemed to let it go. You want to stay for dinner? The invitation caught Vivian completely off guard. What? Dinner. Nothing fancy, probably spaghetti or something. But Elle would like it. She doesn't get much female company, and you seem, I don't know, good for her? Vivian should have said no, should have made an excuse, maintained distance, protected the fragile lie she was living. Instead, she heard herself say, I'd like that. Noah's smile was small, but genuine. 6 o'clock? I'll be here. Vivian drove back to Miller's Inn in a daze, mind spinning with what she'd just agreed to. Dinner with Noah and Ellie. In their home. Like she was a friend, a normal person, someone who belonged in their world. The deception was getting deeper with every passing day, and the worst part was how much she wanted it to be real. 6 o'clock found Vivian standing on the front porch of the small house behind Bennett Auto Works, holding a bottle of wine she'd driven 20 miles to buy because Willow Creek's general store only sold beer. She'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a simple blouse, trying to look casual while her stomach tied itself in knots. This was insane. She was a billionaire CEO eating spaghetti in small-town Pennsylvania under a false name. If anyone from her real life could see her now, they'd think she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Noah answered the door in a clean flannel shirt, hair still damp from a shower. Hey, come on in. The house was exactly what Vivian expected. Small, warm, slightly cluttered in the way homes with children always were. Drawings covered the refrigerator door. Books overflowed from shelves. A worn couch sat in front of an old television. Everything was clean but tired, loved but aging. It was the most welcoming space Vivian had been in years. "Something smells good," she said. "Don't get too excited. I'm not much of a cook." Noah took the wine bottle, glanced at the label, raised his eyebrows slightly. "This is nice." Too nice. Vivian realized her mistake immediately. It was on sale. Must have been some sale. Ellie appeared from what must have been her bedroom, wearing paint-stained jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better days. Her face lit up when she saw Vivian. "Claire, Dad said you were coming, but I didn't believe him." "Why wouldn't you believe him?" Vivian asked, smiling. "Because we never have people over." Ellie said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, like she was stating a simple truth. Noah shot his daughter a look. "We have people over." "Mrs. Patterson came once, for like 10 minutes. "Well, we're having Claire over now," Noah said. "So go wash your hands, dinner's almost ready." Ellie bounded off. Vivian followed Noah into the kitchen, which was tiny but functional. A pot of spaghetti bubbled on the stove. Sauce simmered in a pan. Garlic bread warmed in the oven. "Can I help with anything?" Vivian asked. "You can grab plates from that cabinet if you want." They worked in companionable silence, setting the small dining table, pouring water into mismatched glasses. It felt domestic, normal, like something Vivian had never experienced in her real life. In Manhattan, meals were catered affairs or restaurant reservations. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten dinner at someone's actual home. When they sat down to eat, Ellie launched into an enthusiastic explanation of how she'd organized her new art supplies, creating a detailed cataloging system that would have impressed a museum archivist. Noah listened with patient attention, asking questions, encouraging her to show Vivian the preliminary sketches she'd started. Watching them together, Vivian felt something crack open in her chest. This was what family looked like. Not the cold, transactional relationships of her childhood, where dinner was a formal affair, and conversation revolved around achievements and expectations. This was warmth, laughter, the easy comfort of people who knew each other's rhythms. "So, Claire," Noah said, twirling spaghetti on his fork, "what do you actually do? For work, I mean." The question was casual, but Vivian felt the ground shift beneath her. "I'm a consultant," she said, deploying the cover story she'd prepared weeks ago. "Corporate design. I help companies develop their visual branding." "That why you know about art supplies?" "Part of it." "And you can just work from anywhere?" "These days, yeah. Most of it's remote anyway." Noah nodded, accepting this. "Must be nice. The freedom." "Sometimes," Vivian said, "sometimes it's lonely." The honesty surprised her, but it was true. Her penthouse in Manhattan was beautiful and empty. Her office was powerful and cold. She had colleagues and employees, but few real friends. Success had given her everything except connection. "I get that," Noah said quietly. "Lonely." Their eyes met across the table. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, maybe. An acknowledgement of the specific kind of solitude that came from loss. Ellie, oblivious to the tension, asked Vivian about New York. What were the galleries like? Had she ever met famous artists? What was the best museum? Vivian answered carefully, editing her life into something that fit Claire Monroe's story. Yes, she'd been to the Met. No, she didn't know any famous artists personally. The galleries were beautiful but overwhelming. Every answer was a tightrope walk between truth and fiction. After dinner, Ellie showed Vivian her bedroom, a small space made magical by creativity. Drawings covered every wall. A mobile made from painted paper cranes hung from the ceiling. The bedspread was plain, but the pillows were embroidered with flowers, clumsy stitching that suggested a child learning a new skill. "Did you make these?" Vivian asked, touching one of the pillows. "Mom taught me before she died," Ellie said. "I'm not very good yet." "They're beautiful." Ellie sat on her bed, pulled her knees to her chest. In the soft lamplight, she looked impossibly young and unbearably old at the same time. "Can I ask you something?" the girl said. "Of course." "Do you have kids?" The question hit like a blade between ribs. "No, I don't." "Do you want them?" Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words with care. "I think I always assumed I would, someday. But then someday kept not happening, and now—" She trailed off. "I don't know. Maybe it's too late." My dad says it's never too late for good things. Your dad sounds like a wise man, Ellie smiled. He is. He's sad a lot, but he's wise. The casual observation nearly broke Vivian's heart. Children saw things adults tried to hide. Ellie had been watching her father carry grief for 3 years, understanding more than he probably realized. Do you miss your mom? Vivian asked gently. Every day. Ellie's voice was small but steady. Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like. That's the worst part. I can see her face in pictures, but I can't remember how she sounded when she said my name. Vivian reached out, took the girl's hand. I'm so sorry, Ellie. Dad has videos on his phone. Sometimes I watch them when he's asleep, just to remember. The image, this child sneaking her father's phone to watch videos of her dead mother, was almost too much to bear. You know what I think? Vivian said. I think the people we love never really leave us. They live in the things they taught us. The way you embroider pillows, the way you see the world when you draw. That's your mom, still here, still with you. Ellie looked at her with eyes too wise for 10 years old. Claire? Yes? I'm really glad you came to Willow Creek. Vivian's throat closed. Me too, sweetheart. When she returned to the kitchen, Noah was washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in soapy water. Vivian grabbed a towel and started drying without asking permission. They worked in silence for a while, the quiet interrupted only by the clink of plates and the rush of water. She really likes you, Noah said eventually. I really like her. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast. He paused, hands stilling in the water. Actually, she doesn't usually warm up to people at all. Maybe she needed someone who isn't afraid of her sadness, Vivian said. Someone who doesn't try to fix it or make it disappear. Noah looked at her sharply. That what you think I do? No, I think you carry it with her, which is different, better. But sometimes kids need someone outside the grief, someone who can witness it without being crushed by it. He was quiet for a long moment, processing this. How'd you get so good at understanding people? He asked. Vivian almost laughed. She'd spent her entire career reading competitors, anticipating market moves, predicting human behavior for profit. But this was different. This wasn't strategy, this was empathy. I'm not good at understanding people, she admitted. Usually I'm terrible at it. But Ellie, she's easy to understand because she's honest. Children haven't learned to hide yet. Unlike adults. There was something in his tone that made Vivian look up sharply. Noah was watching her, expression unreadable. Unlike adults, she agreed carefully. You're good at hiding too, Noah said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. What makes you say that? The way you talk about New York. Like it's a place you visited instead of somewhere you lived. The way you flinch when Ellie asks personal questions. The expensive wine and the cheap rental car. He handed her the last plate to dry. You're running from something big. I just can't figure out what. Vivian's hands trembled slightly as she dried the plate. Maybe I'm just a private person. Maybe. Noah pulled the plug, watched the water drain. Or maybe you're scared if you tell the truth, people won't like what they see. The observation was too close, too accurate. Vivian set down the plate, gripped the edge of the counter. What do you want me to say, Noah? Nothing you're not ready to say. He dried his hands, turned to face her fully. I'm not trying to push, I need to know if you're going to hurt my daughter. I would never, Not on purpose, Noah interrupted. I don't think you'd hurt her on purpose. But Ellie's getting attached, and if you're planning to disappear back to whatever life you're hiding from, I need to know now, before she gets hurt again. It was the most words she'd heard him string together at once. Passionate, protective, edged with a father's fear. Vivian wanted to promise she'd never leave, wanted to swear she'd stay in Willow Creek forever, that this strange little life she'd stumbled into was real and permanent. But the lies were already too big. And adding more would only make the eventual collapse more devastating. I don't want to hurt her, Vivian said, and it was the truest thing she'd said all night. I care about Ellie. I care about both of you. More than I should, probably. What's that mean? It means I came here looking for something I didn't know how to name, and I found it, and now I don't know what to do with it. Noah studied her face, searching for meaning in the spaces between her words. You ever think maybe you're making this more complicated than it needs to be? He said finally. How so? You're here. We like having you here. Maybe that's enough for now. The simplicity of it nearly undid her. In Vivian's world, nothing was ever simple. Every relationship was a calculation. Every decision had 20 contingencies. The idea that something could just exist without strategy or endgame was almost incomprehensible. I don't know how to do simple, she admitted. Noah smiled, and it softened the worried lines around his eyes. Nobody does at first. It's like anything else. You practice. Before Vivian could respond, Ellie appeared in the doorway, yawning. I'm tired, she announced. Bedtime, kiddo, Noah said. Say goodnight to Claire. Ellie crossed to Vivian, hugged her again. Vivian hugged back, breathing in the scent of watercolor paint and children's shampoo. Will you come back? Ellie whispered. If your dad says it's okay. Please, Dad? Noah looked at Vivian over his daughter's head, expression careful but not unkind. Yeah, Elle, Claire can come back. Ellie beamed, said goodnight, and disappeared toward her room, leaving Vivian and Noah standing in the small kitchen, the weight of unspoken things hanging between them. Thank you for dinner, Vivian said quietly. Thank you for the art supplies, and for being kind to my daughter. It's not hard to be kind to her. Noah walked Vivian to the door, stood on the threshold as she stepped onto the porch. The night was cool, stars bright above Willow Creek's minimal light pollution. Claire, Noah said as she reached the steps. Vivian turned back. Yes? Whoever you're running from, whoever you used to be. He paused, choosing words carefully. I don't care. I just care who you are when you're here. The kindness in that statement nearly broke her. Vivian nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked to her car. As she drove back to Miller's Inn, she thought about the carpenter's pencil still sitting in her Manhattan desk drawer, about the man who'd saved her life without knowing who she was, about the fact that she was now doing to him exactly what he'd never done to her, lying about everything. The guilt was crushing, but not crushing enough to make her stop, because for the first time in her carefully constructed life, Vivian Sterling was happy. And happiness, she was discovering, was a drug more powerful than any boardroom victory or financial triumph, even when it was built on lies. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that felt dangerously close to belonging. Vivian came to the garage 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes with car problems that were increasingly implausible, sometimes just to visit. She brought coffee in the mornings, helped Ellie with art projects in the afternoons, stayed for dinner more nights than not. Noah never pushed for more information about her life, never demanded explanations for the contradictions. He simply accepted her presence the way he seemed to accept most things, with quiet grace and minimal fuss. It should have been enough. It wasn't. Because the more time Vivian spent in Willow Creek, the harder it became to remember why she'd built her empire in the first place. The deals that had once excited her now felt hollow. The power that had driven her felt increasingly pointless. She started letting calls go to voicemail, started telling her COO to handle things she would have micromanaged before. Her assistant in New York called, concerned. Mrs. Sterling, the board is asking questions. They want to know when you're coming back. Vivian stood in her room at Miller's Inn, looking out at Willow Creek's quiet main street. Tell them I'm working remotely. Everything's fine. For how long? Good question. Vivian had no answer. I'll let you know, she said, and hung up. She was standing at a crossroads, and she knew it. One path led back to Manhattan, to the empire she'd built, to the life that made sense on paper but had never felt like home. The other path led where? Deeper into deception, into a fantasy life that would eventually collapse under the weight of its own lies. There was no good choice, only impossible ones. You okay? Vivian, startled, turned to find Noah standing in the doorway of the garage office where she'd been helping Ellie organize art supplies. She hadn't heard him approach. Yeah, just thinking. About? Complicated things. Noah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression gentle. You know you can talk to me, right? About the complicated things. Vivian wanted to tell him everything. About the crash, about her search, about the empire waiting in New York, about the fact that she'd been lying since the moment they met. Instead, she said, I know, thank you. Ellie burst into the office, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Claire, come see what I made." And just like that, the moment passed. Vivian followed the girl to the workbench where she'd set up a makeshift studio. Ellie had created a watercolor landscape, the old bridge by Miller's farm, rendered in soft blues and greens, light playing on water with a delicacy that shouldn't have been possible in someone so young. "Ellie," Vivian breathed, This is museum quality." "Really?" The girl's voice was small, hopeful. "Really? Have you shown your dad?" "He says it's good, but he says everything I make is good." "Because everything you make is good," Noah called from across the garage. Vivian knelt beside Ellie, studying the painting more closely. "This isn't just good. This is exceptional. You have a real gift, sweetheart." "My mom used to say that too." Ellie's voice went quiet. "She was going to take me to New York once, to see the real art museums, but then she got sick." Vivian's heart clenched. "What if we went together?" The words were out before she could stop them. Ellie's head snapped up. "What?" "To New York. You, me, your dad. We could spend a weekend. See the Met, the MoMA, the galleries." Vivian was improvising wildly now, unable to stop herself. "I still have connections there. I could arrange private tours, introduce you to working artists." "Dad!" Ellie shrieked. "Did you hear that?" Noah appeared, looking uncertain. "Ellie, Claire's just being nice. We can't—" "Please?" The girl turned pleading eyes on her father. "Please, please, please?" "It's expensive," Noah said, "and I can't take time off." "I'd cover it," Vivian said quickly. Too quickly. "I mean, I get corporate rates on hotels because of my work, and I know people. It wouldn't cost anything." Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. "Claire, think of it as a gift for Ellie. She deserves to see real art, Noah. She deserves to know what's possible." Father and daughter had a silent conversation with their eyes. Vivian could see Noah's resistance warring with his desire to give his daughter something beautiful, something Sarah had promised and never delivered. "One weekend," Vivian pressed. "That's all. I promise." Noah looked at Ellie's hopeful face, then at Vivian, then sighed in defeat. "One weekend," he agreed, "but we're paying our own way." "Of course," Vivian lied. Ellie launched herself at her father, then at Vivian, squealing with joy. And Vivian realized with creeping horror what she'd just done. She'd invited them to New York, to her city, where everything could unravel in an instant. The panic set in around 3 a.m. Vivian lay awake in her room at Miller's Inn, staring at the ceiling, mind racing through every possible disaster scenario. What had she been thinking? Inviting Noah and Ellie to New York was professional suicide. Her face was on billboards. Her company headquarters occupied an entire building in Midtown. She'd been featured in the Times, the Journal, Forbes, Vanity Fair. One wrong turn, one chance encounter, one person recognizing her, and everything would shatter. She could cancel, claim a work emergency, a sick friend, anything. But she'd seen Ellie's face light up with hope, and the thought of extinguishing that light made her physically ill. So Vivian did what she always did when facing an impossible problem. She planned. Over the next 2 weeks, she orchestrated the trip with the same precision she brought to corporate acquisitions. She booked a boutique hotel in Brooklyn, far from her usual Manhattan haunts, arranged private museum tours for early morning hours when the galleries would be nearly empty, called in favors with curators and gallery owners, people who owed her but didn't know Claire Monroe existed. She even had her assistant compile a list of every restaurant, shop, and public space Vivian Sterling was known to frequent, so she could avoid them completely. It was exhausting. It was also completely insane. "You're doing what?" her COO demanded when Vivian called to tell him she'd be unreachable for a long weekend. "Vivian, the Bergstrom deal closes in 10 days. We need you here." "You can handle it, Marcus. That's why I pay you obscene amounts of money." "This isn't like you." "Maybe I'm tired of being like me." She hung up before he could respond, then immediately second-guessed everything. The board would have questions. Investors would panic. The business press would speculate. But for once in her carefully controlled life, Vivian didn't care. Or she cared less than she cared about keeping the promise she'd made to a 10-year-old girl. The morning they left for New York, Noah loaded their bags into his pickup truck with the same careful attention he gave to everything. 2 small duffel bags, worn but clean. Ellie clutched her sketchbook like a talisman, dressed in her best outfit, a dress that was slightly too small, and shoes that had been polished until they shined. "You didn't have to dress up, kiddo," Noah said gently. "It's just a train ride." "It's New York, Dad. Mom said you always dress nice for New York." The mention of Sarah hung in the air for a moment. Noah's expression softened, went distant. "Your mom was right," he said quietly. "You look beautiful." Vivian waited in her rental car, watching the scene through the windshield. The tenderness between father and daughter, the way Noah's hand lingered on Ellie's shoulder, the ghost of a woman neither of them could forget. It reminded Vivian of everything she'd never had, that easy, uncomplicated love. "Ready?" Noah called. Vivian got out of the car. "Ready, we'll take my rental to the station. More room." The drive to the train station took 40 minutes. Ellie chattered the entire time, listing all the things she wanted to see, asking questions about museums and artists and whether they might see someone famous. Noah sat in the passenger seat, quiet, occasionally glancing at Vivian with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You nervous?" she asked when Ellie paused for breath. "About what?" "The city. Big crowds, noise, all that." Noah shrugged. "Haven't been anywhere bigger than Pittsburgh in 5 years. But I figure millions of people do it every day. Can't be that hard." What he didn't say. "I'm nervous about leaving Willow Creek, about stepping outside the small, safe world I've built, about what it means that I'm doing this with you." But Vivian heard it anyway. The train ride was uneventful but electric with anticipation. Ellie pressed her face to the window, sketching the landscape as it blurred past. Noah read a paperback thriller, or pretended to. Vivian answered emails on her phone, carefully worded messages to her executive team that gave nothing away. When the train pulled into Penn Station, Ellie's eyes went wide. "There's so many people," she whispered. "Stay close," Noah said, taking his daughter's hand. They emerged onto the street into a wall of sound and motion. Yellow cabs, honking horns, the smell of hot dogs and garbage and possibility. Vivian had walked these streets 10,000 times without thinking, but seeing them through Ellie's eyes made the city feel new again, dangerous and beautiful and overwhelming. "This way," Vivian said, guiding them toward the subway. "Hotel's in Brooklyn. We'll drop our bags, then head to the Met." "We're taking the subway?" Ellie's voice climbed an octave. "Fastest way to get around." Noah looked skeptical, but followed. The subway platform was crowded, hot, slightly menacing if you weren't used to it. Vivian positioned herself between them and the tracks, old instincts kicking in. When the train arrived, she helped Ellie navigate the gap, found them seats, pointed out the map above the doors. "You've done this before," Noah observed. "Once or twice," Vivian said carefully. The hotel was small but elegant, the kind of place that catered to artists and writers, not business people. Vivian had chosen it specifically because no one from her world would ever stay there. They checked in under Claire Monroe's reservation, got keys to 2 adjoining rooms. Noah looked at the rooms, then at Vivian. "How much is this costing?" he asked quietly, while Ellie explored her room, examining every detail. "I told you, corporate rate, practically nothing." "Claire." "Noah." Vivian met his eyes. "Let me do this, please, for Ellie." He wanted to argue. She could see it in the set of his jaw, the way his hands curled into fists. But he also knew his daughter deserved this, and pride was expensive when you were raising a child on a mechanic's salary. "Okay," he said finally, "but we're paying for meals." "Deal." They had 30 minutes before the private Met tour Vivian had arranged. Ellie used the time to change into slightly more comfortable shoes, still nice but less likely to give her blisters. Noah stood at the window of his room, looking out at Brooklyn's skyline, shoulders tense. Vivian knocked on the connecting door. "You okay?" "Yeah, just—" He trailed off. "Haven't done something like this in a long time. Take Ellie somewhere special. Sarah always handled the big stuff. Field trips, school events, making memories. I just worked and came home tired. You're here now. Because you made it happen." "Because you said yes," Vivian corrected. "That's the hard part, saying yes." Noah turned to look at her, expression complicated. "Why are you doing this, Claire? Really?" The question landed like a weight. Vivian could feel the lie forming on her lips, the careful deflection she'd perfected over months. Instead, she told him something true. Because watching Ellie's face light up when she talks about art is the best thing I've felt in years, Vivian said quietly. Because you both remind me that good people still exist. Because I spent so long building a life I thought I wanted, and then I met you and realized I'd built the wrong thing entirely. Noah's eyes widened slightly. Claire. We should go, Vivian said quickly, before he could ask questions she couldn't answer. The museum's waiting. The Metropolitan Museum of Art stood like a temple on Fifth Avenue, its massive steps and columns promising treasures within. Vivian had been here hundreds of times, for galas and exhibitions and quiet Sunday mornings when she needed to remember why beauty mattered. But she'd never been here like this, with people who'd never seen it before. Their private guide met them at the entrance, a young curator named Sarah who specialized in European paintings. Vivian had called in a favor through a gallery owner, careful not to reveal her identity, asking only for someone knowledgeable and patient with children. You must be Claire, the curator said, shaking Vivian's hand, and this must be our young artist. Ellie nodded, suddenly shy. I'm told you're interested in watercolors, the curator continued, and pencil drawings and oil paintings and charcoal. Ellie's enthusiasm overcame her shyness. Basically everything. The curator smiled. Then we should start with the old masters. For the next 3 hours, they wandered through galleries of Vermeers and Rembrandts, Monets and Sargents. The curator explained techniques and historical context, but she also knew when to be quiet, when to let the art speak for itself. Ellie stood transfixed before a Caravaggio, studying the way light fell across painted faces. Noah stood beside his daughter, hand on her shoulder, looking at the paintings with the same careful attention he gave to engine problems. Vivian watched them both, feeling something crack open in her chest. This was what she'd been missing. Not the art itself, though she loved it, but the sharing, the witnessing, the simple joy of experiencing beauty with people who mattered. What do you think? The curator asked Ellie, gesturing to a massive landscape by Turner. It's like he painted weather, Ellie breathed. Not just what it looks like, but what it feels like. The curator's eyebrows rose. That's exactly right. You have a very sophisticated eye. Her mother was an artist, Noah said quietly. Then she comes by it honestly. The curator knelt beside Ellie. Would you like to see something special? Something most visitors don't get to see? Ellie nodded eagerly. They were taken to a climate-controlled room where works on paper were stored, drawings and sketches by masters long dead. The curator carefully pulled out pieces from the archives, explaining their provenance and significance. But what struck Ellie most was how rough they were, how human. These weren't finished masterpieces, they were practice, experimentation, artists working through problems. They made mistakes? Ellie asked, pointing to visible erasures on a Da Vinci sketch. All the time, the curator said. That's how they got good, by being willing to mess up and try again. Ellie looked at Vivian, eyes shining. Did you hear that? I did. Even Leonardo da Vinci made mistakes. Even him. When the tour ended, they thanked the curator profusely. Noah tried to tip her. She refused, saying it had been her pleasure. They emerged onto Fifth Avenue into afternoon sun, Ellie practically vibrating with excitement. Can we see the Modern Art Museum tomorrow? She asked. And the Guggenheim? And easy, kiddo, Noah laughed. One museum at a time. They had lunch at a small cafe in Central Park. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and lemonade. Ellie sketched while they ate, trying to capture the feeling of the Turner landscape from memory. Noah watched his daughter work, expression soft with something that might have been pride or grief or both. Thank you, he said to Vivian, for this, all of it. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yeah, I do, because you didn't have to do any of this. You could have just fixed your car and moved on, but you stayed. You saw Ellie, really saw her, and you... He paused, choosing words carefully. You made her feel important, like her art mattered. That's a gift. Vivian's throat felt tight. She is important. Her art does matter. To you, maybe, but to the world? Noah shrugged. She's just a kid from nowhere with a dead mom and a dad who can barely keep the lights on. Don't say that. Vivian's voice came out sharper than intended. Don't diminish what she has. Talent like hers is rare, Noah. With the right training, the right opportunities, which cost money we don't have. I could help. The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and tempting. Noah shook his head. We can't accept that kind of help, Claire. It's too much. Why? Because we barely know you. The truth of that statement cut deep. They didn't know her. They knew Claire Monroe, a fiction, a carefully constructed lie designed to hide the woman who'd spent 2 years obsessing over a stranger who'd saved her life. Maybe you know me better than you think, Vivian said quietly. Do I? Noah leaned forward, voice low. Because sometimes I look at you and I have no idea who you are. You talk like someone educated, carry yourself like someone important, but you're supposedly just a freelance consultant living out of a cheap hotel. You know curators at the Met well enough to arrange private tours. You brought Ellie art supplies that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Nothing about you adds up, Claire. Vivian felt the ground shift beneath her. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know what to make of you, and that scares me. Because Ellie's getting attached, and if you're not who you say you are... I care about her, Vivian said, and it was the truest thing she'd ever spoken. I care about both of you. Everything else is complicated. Complicated how? Before Vivian could answer, Ellie looked up from her sketchbook. Are you guys fighting? No, baby, Noah said quickly. Just talking. Say, you look like you're fighting. We're not, I promise. But the moment had shifted. The easy joy of the morning had been replaced by something heavier, questions that couldn't be answered without destroying everything. They spent the rest of the day walking through Central Park, visiting the boathouse, watching street performers. Ellie's excitement gradually returned, but Noah remained quiet, watchful, and Vivian could feel him reassessing everything he thought he knew about her. That night, after Ellie had gone to bed in her hotel room, Noah knocked on the connecting door. Can we talk? He asked. Vivian's heart hammered. Of course. They sat in her room, two adults trying to navigate something neither fully understood. I'm not trying to push you away, Noah said. But I need to protect my daughter. She's already lost one person she loved. I can't let her lose another. I'm not going anywhere. Can you promise that? Really promise? Vivian wanted to. Wanted to swear she'd stay in Willow Creek forever, that Claire Monroe was who she'd be from now on, that the empire in Manhattan could run itself. But she'd built her entire life on never making promises she couldn't keep. I can promise I'll try, she said instead. That's not good enough. It's all I have. Noah stood, paced to the window, looked out at Brooklyn's lights. Who are you, Claire? Really? This was it. The moment she could tell him everything. About the crash, the search, the lies. About Vivian Sterling and the carpenter's pencil and the 2 years she'd spent thinking about a stranger who'd disappeared into fog. She could end this now, come clean, let the consequences fall where they would. I'm someone who lost herself a long time ago, Vivian said instead, and meeting you and Ellie helped me remember who I wanted to be. It was true, just not the whole truth. Noah turned to face her. And who's that? Someone decent. Someone who does good things not because they'll get something in return, but because it's right. Like fixing a stranger's car and asking for nothing? The parallel hit like a punch. Vivian nearly laughed at the irony. She was trying to be like him, the man who'd saved her life without knowing it, while lying to him about everything. Yeah, she said softly. Like that. Noah crossed the room, sat beside her on the bed. Close enough that Vivian could feel the heat of him, smell motor oil and soap and something fundamentally good. I want to trust you, he said. So trust me. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I'm starting to care about you, Noah admitted, not just as someone who's kind to my daughter, as more than that. And that terrifies me. Vivian's breath caught. Noah, I know it's crazy. I barely know you. But these past few months, having you around, seeing Ellie smile again, coming home to dinner that someone else helped make. He paused, jaw working. It feels like living again instead of just surviving. And I don't know if I'm allowed to want that. Why wouldn't you be allowed? Because Sarah's only been gone 3 years. Because wanting to move on feels like betraying her. Because Ellie still cries for her mom at night, and I'm supposed to be grieving, not falling for someone new. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and impossible to take back. Vivian reached for his hand. Sarah would want you to be happy. You didn't know her. I know she loved you, and I know love doesn't ask people to stop living when it ends. Noah's fingers tightened around hers. What if I mess this up? What if I let myself care and you leave anyway? What if you don't let yourself care and you miss something beautiful? They sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, both afraid to move forward or back. Then Noah leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, the kiss of someone who'd forgotten how. Vivian responded instinctively, one hand coming up to cup his face, tasting salt and fear, and the desperate hope of two people trying to build something from broken pieces. When they pulled apart, Noah's eyes were bright. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize. Claire, we can't do this unless I know you're staying, unless I know who you really are." And there it was again. The demand for truth she couldn't give. Vivian stood, putting distance between them. "You should go. Ellie might wake up." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." Noah stood too, hurt flashing across his face. "Okay, I get it." "Noah, wait." But he was already at the door, hand on the knob. "When you're ready to tell me the truth," he said quietly, "I'll be here. But I can't keep doing this halfway. It's not fair to any of us." He left, closing the connecting door behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of something. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, head in her hands, everything unraveling. She'd come to New York thinking she could control the narrative, manage the risk, keep all the pieces separate. Instead, she'd let Noah Bennett kiss her while lying about her name, her life, everything that mattered. She was supposed to be smarter than this. Instead, she was just another person making terrible decisions for something that felt like love. The next morning felt like walking through glass. They went to MoMA as planned, Ellie oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. Noah was polite but distant, keeping conversation surface level. Vivian played tour guide, pointing out Pollocks and Rothkos, explaining abstract expressionism while feeling like her own life was becoming increasingly abstract. "Why is that one worth millions?" Ellie asked, pointing to a canvas that appeared to be just blocks of color. "Because it makes people feel something," Vivian said. "Not everyone, but enough people. Art doesn't have to be realistic to be valuable. It just has to be honest." The irony wasn't lost on her. They had lunch at a diner Noah insisted on paying for, then visited the Guggenheim, walking up the famous spiral, while Ellie's head swiveled in wonder. Somewhere between Kandinsky and Klee, Noah's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned. "It's the garage. I need to take this." He stepped away, pressed the phone to his ear. Vivian watched his expression shift from confusion to concern to something darker. "When?" he asked. "How bad?" "Okay. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow." He hung up, ran a hand through his hair. "Everything okay?" Vivian asked. "Pipe burst in the garage, flooded the office, damaged some equipment. Bill from the hardware store is there trying to get it under control, but..." He looked at Ellie, clearly calculating how to explain this without scaring her. "We need to go home," Vivian finished for him. "Yeah, I'm sorry, kiddo. I know you wanted to see more." Ellie's face fell, but she nodded bravely. "It's okay, Dad. The garage is important." They took a cab back to Brooklyn, packed quickly, checked out. The train ride back to Pennsylvania was quiet, Ellie sketching to process disappointment, Noah staring out the window, Vivian mentally cataloging everything that had gone wrong. By the time they reached Willow Creek, it was dark. The garage looked worse than the phone call had suggested. 2 inches of standing water in the office, soaked files, a ruined computer. Noah stood in the doorway, shoulders slumping. "Dad?" Ellie's voice was small. "Is it really bad?" "It's fixable," he said, but his tone said otherwise. Vivian surveyed the damage with a business person's eye. The insurance deductible alone would probably wipe out whatever savings Noah had. The lost business during repairs would make it worse. She could fix this with a phone call and a wire transfer, could make the whole problem disappear before morning. But that would raise questions she couldn't answer. "I should go," she said quietly. "Let you deal with this." "Yeah." Noah didn't look at her. "Thanks for the trip, Claire. Ellie really loved it." "I loved it too." She wanted to say more, wanted to promise she'd help, that she'd stay, that she was sorry for everything. But Noah had already turned away. already started salvaging what he could from the wreckage. Vivian drove back to Miller's Inn feeling like she was leaving something precious behind. The next morning, she made a decision. She called her assistant in New York. "I need you to do something for me, quietly." "Of course, Ms. Sterling." "There's a garage in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. Bennett Auto Works. They had flood damage. I want you to contact their insurance company, find out what's not covered, and arrange for anonymous payment of any gaps. New equipment, repairs, everything. Make it look like it's coming from a local business grant or charity fund. Can you do that? Consider it done. And send me the file on the Bergstrom deal. I'm coming back." A pause. "When?" "Tomorrow." Because Noah had been right, she couldn't keep doing this halfway. Either she told him the truth and watched everything collapse, or she walked away before more damage was done. Walking away was cleaner, safer, and it was killing her. She spent her last day in Willow Creek driving past places that had become meaningful. The diner where she'd first tried their terrible coffee, the park where she'd watched Ellie sketch trees, the small house behind the garage where she'd learned what family could look like when it wasn't transactional. That evening, she sat in her hotel room and wrote 2 letters. One to Ellie, explaining that work had called her back to New York, that she was sorry to leave without saying goodbye, that the girl should never stop drawing because she had a gift the world needed. One to Noah, trying to explain the inexplicable. How meeting them had changed her. How she wished she could be the person they thought she was. How some people were better at leaving than staying, and she was one of them. She sealed both letters, left them at the front desk of Miller's Inn, with instructions to deliver them in the morning after she'd gone. Then Vivian Sterling packed her single suitcase, got in her rental car, and drove away from Willow Creek at dawn. She didn't look back, because if she had, she might have seen the lights on in Bennett Auto Works, where Noah was trying to save his business and wondering why the woman he'd started to love had felt like a ghost, even when she was standing right in front of him. The drive to New York took 6 hours. Vivian spent them practicing her re-entry into corporate life, rehearsing explanations for her absence, preparing to slot back into the role of ruthless CEO as if the past few months had been a dream. Her penthouse felt too big when she walked in, too cold, too empty. The first thing she did was open her desk drawer and take out the carpenter's pencil. She held it in her hands, this relic from a different life, and finally let herself cry. For what she'd found in Willow Creek, for what she'd lost by running, for the fact that she'd spent 2 years searching for a man who'd saved her life, only to destroy his when she finally found him. The letters arrived at Bennett Auto Works on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a kid from Miller's Inn who looked uncomfortable with the task. Noah was under a Honda Civic when Ellie brought them in, her face already crumpling. "She's gone," Ellie said, voice breaking. "Claire's gone." Noah slid out from under the car, wiped his hands on a rag he'd already used a dozen times that morning. He took the envelope Ellie held out, saw his name written in Claire's elegant handwriting. "What does it say?" Ellie asked. Noah opened it, read in silence. The words were careful, apologetic, distant. Work obligations. Couldn't stay. Grateful for the friendship. Sorry for leaving without goodbye. Every sentence was a knife. "Dad?" "She had to go back to New York," Noah said, keeping his voice steady for his daughter's sake. "For work." "Is she coming back?" Noah looked at the letter again, searching for promises that weren't there. "I don't know, baby." Ellie's letter said similar things, wrapped in encouragement about art and talent and never giving up on dreams. It was kind, thoughtful, completely inadequate. Ellie read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in her sketchbook, like it was something precious that might disintegrate if handled too roughly. "I thought she liked us," she whispered. "I think she did." Then why did she leave? It was the question Noah had been asking himself since the moment he'd kissed Claire in that Brooklyn hotel room and felt her pull away. He'd known then, in some deep part of himself, that she was already gone, that whatever she was running from was bigger than whatever she might be running toward. "Sometimes people leave even when they don't want to," Noah said. "Sometimes they think it's the right thing, even when it hurts." "That's stupid." "Yeah, kiddo, it is." Ellie cried that night, quiet tears she tried to hide in her pillow. Noah sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair, feeling like he'd failed her again. First her mother, now this. Another woman she'd started to love, vanished without explanation. I should have known better, Noah muttered. Known what? Ellie asked, voice muffled. That it was too good to be real. Ellie sat up, wiped her eyes, looked at her father with an expression far too old for her face. She was real, Dad. I know she was. She just got scared. What makes you say that? Because that's what you do too. You get scared and you stop trying. The observation hit like a wrench to the gut. Noah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because his 10-year-old daughter had just seen through him with brutal clarity. He was scared. Had been scared since Sarah died. Scared of trying again, of failing again, of letting anyone close enough to hurt them both. Claire had gotten close anyway, and then she'd left. And maybe that was proof he'd been right to be scared all along. Get some sleep, Elle, he said quietly. Things will look better in the morning. But things didn't look better in the morning. They looked like a garage with water-damaged equipment and mounting repair bills. They looked like a little girl who barely touched her cereal. They looked like a life that had been manageable before Claire Monroe arrived and became unbearable in her absence. Noah threw himself into work, fixing the flood damage with his own hands because he couldn't afford contractors. He replaced drywall, installed new flooring, salvaged what he could from ruined files. The physical labor was good. It kept his mind occupied, his hands busy, his heart from dwelling on the kiss that had tasted like hope and ending. 3 days after Claire left, something strange happened. A check arrived from something called the Pennsylvania Small Business Relief Fund, covering every penny of damage the insurance hadn't. The letter explained it was a grant for rural businesses affected by infrastructure failures, automatically awarded based on county records. Noah stared at the check for a long time. The amount was exactly what he needed. Not more, not less. Just enough to make the problem disappear. He called the number on the letterhead, got a polite administrator who confirmed the grant was legitimate, required no repayment, and was being distributed to several businesses in the region. It should have been good news. Instead, it made Noah's gut twist with suspicion. What do you think? He asked Bill from the hardware store, who'd helped him with the initial cleanup. Bill shrugged. Government money works in mysterious ways. I'd cash it before they realized they made a mistake. Noah cashed the check, used it to repair the damage, replace the computer, buy the equipment he'd been putting off for years. The garage was better than it had been before the flood, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Claire was somehow involved, and he hated that he still thought about her constantly. Ellie stopped drawing for 2 weeks. It was the thing that scared Noah most. His daughter had drawn every day since she was old enough to hold a pencil, through her mother's illness and death, through every hard moment of the past 3 years. Drawing was how she processed the world. Now her sketchbook sat untouched on her desk, the expensive colored pencils Claire had brought still in their box. You should use those, Noah said one evening, gesturing to the art supplies. I don't feel like it. Your mom would want you to keep drawing. Maybe I don't care what Mom would want. Ellie's voice was sharp, angry in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Maybe I'm tired of everyone leaving. Noah sat beside her on the bed. First Mom, then Claire. Who's next, Dad? You? I'm not going anywhere. That's what Claire said too, that she cared about us, that she wasn't going anywhere. And then she just left without even saying goodbye. Ellie's voice cracked. At least Mom didn't have a choice. Claire chose to leave. Noah pulled his daughter into his arms, let her cry against his chest. And he thought about Claire's letter, about the careful way it had avoided promises or explanations, about how someone could care and still run. Some people don't know how to stay, he said quietly. It's not your fault. It's not mine either. It's just how they're built. Then they shouldn't pretend, Ellie said fiercely. They shouldn't make you love them if they're just going to leave. No, Noah agreed. They shouldn't. But as he held his crying daughter, Noah realized he'd been just as guilty. He'd let his guard down. He'd started to imagine a future that included Claire Monroe, even though he'd known from the beginning that nothing about her added up. He'd wanted to believe anyway. And belief, he was learning, was the most dangerous thing of all. 2 months passed. Summer turned to autumn. The leaves changed, the air cooled, Willow Creek settled into the quiet rhythm of a small town preparing for winter. Noah kept the garage running, picked Ellie up from school, made dinner, supervised homework. The routines that had sustained them before Claire arrived sustained them again, but everything felt dimmer. Ellie eventually started drawing again, but without the joy she'd had before. Her sketches were technically proficient but emotionally flat, like she was going through motions rather than chasing inspiration. Noah noticed but didn't know how to fix it. He'd gone back to being the man he'd been before the wreck on the foggy highway, before he'd pulled a dying woman from twisted metal and set something in motion he couldn't have predicted. Quiet. Practical. Focused on survival rather than living. It should have been enough. It wasn't. Then, on a gray October afternoon, everything changed. Noah was closing up the garage early, planning to take Ellie to the diner for her birthday dinner when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Noah Bennett? A woman's voice, professional, slightly urgent. Yes. Who's this? My name is Rachel Kim. I'm a private investigator. I'm calling about Claire Monroe. Noah's heart stopped. Is she okay? That's complicated. Mr. Bennett, how well do you know Ms. Monroe? Not well, apparently. Why? Because Claire Monroe doesn't exist. The words landed like a physical blow. Noah leaned against the workbench, grip tightening on the phone. What do you mean she doesn't exist? I mean there's no record of anyone by that name matching the description of the woman you knew. No social security number, no driver's license, no tax records. It's an alias. Why are you telling me this? Because 2 years ago, my client was in a car accident outside Willow Creek. Someone pulled her from the wreck and saved her life, then disappeared. She's been trying to find that person ever since. And I think it might have been you. Noah's mind raced, trying to make connections that felt impossible. I don't understand. The woman you knew is Claire Monroe? Her real name is Vivian Sterling. She's the CEO of Sterling Global Design, worth approximately $3 billion. And she's been looking for you since you saved her life. The garage tilted. Noah grabbed the edge of the workbench harder, trying to anchor himself to something solid. That's insane. I have photographs, Mr. Bennett. The woman who introduced herself as Claire Monroe and the woman whose life you saved are the same person. She found you 2 years later and came to Willow Creek under a false identity. Why would she do that? That's something you'd have to ask her. Noah's thoughts spiraled. The expensive wine, the art supplies that cost more than he'd admitted, the private museum tours, the way Claire had spoken sometimes, like someone used to giving orders and being obeyed, the grant that had appeared from nowhere. It all made a sick kind of sense. Where is she now? Noah asked, voice hollow. New York. And Mr. Bennett, she's been funding your daughter's art education, anonymously. Through a scholarship program at the Youth Arts Academy Ellie just started attending. Noah's vision blurred. What? The full scholarship Ellie received 3 weeks ago? It came from a foundation run by Sterling Global Design. I don't think it was a coincidence. Noah ended the call, set the phone down carefully, and stood in his garage trying to process information that rewrote everything he thought he knew. Claire was Vivian Sterling, billionaire, CEO, the woman from the wreck. She'd been lying from the first moment. She'd found him, infiltrated his life, gotten close to his daughter, all while pretending to be someone else. And she was still trying to help them, even after running away. Noah didn't know whether to be furious or heartbroken. He settled on both. Dad? Ellie appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder. Ready to go? Noah looked at his daughter, thought about the scholarship she'd been so excited about, the acceptance letter that had arrived out of nowhere for a program they could never have afforded. Elle, can I ask you something? Sure. The Art Academy. Did you ever wonder how you got that scholarship? Ellie shrugged. They said I was talented, that my portfolio was exceptional. You think Claire had anything to do with it? His daughter's expression shifted, became guarded. Why would she? Because I think maybe Claire wasn't who she said she was. Ellie set down her backpack, crossed her arms. What do you mean? Noah took a breath, trying to figure out how to explain this to a 10-year-old. I think Claire might have been using a fake name, that she was actually someone important who was hiding who she really was. Like a spy? Sort of. More like someone very rich who wanted to see how regular people lived. Ellie was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she said something that surprised him. So? So? Noah echoed. Elle, she lied to us. But she was still nice. She still cared about my art. She still made you smile again. Ellie's eyes were bright but fierce. I don't care if her name was really Claire or Vivian or whatever. She was good to us. That part was real. How do you know? Because I saw her face when she looked at my drawings. Nobody can fake that. And I saw her face when she looked at you, Dad. She loved us. I know she did. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to list all the ways the deception was unforgivable, but his daughter had always been wiser than her years, and she was looking at him now like she could see through all his anger to the hurt underneath. She still left, Noah said quietly. Because she was scared. I told you that already. Ellie picked up her backpack. Are we going to dinner, or are you going to stand here being mad about someone who tried to help us? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Noah thought about the grant that had saved his garage, about the scholarship giving his daughter opportunities he could never have provided, about a woman who'd spent 2 years searching for a stranger who'd saved her life, then tried to repay that kindness while hiding behind a lie. Maybe it was unforgivable, or maybe it was just complicated. Let's go to dinner, he said finally. They drove to the diner in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Over burgers and milkshakes, Ellie talked about her classes at the academy, the techniques she was learning, the other kids who actually understood why she cared about light and shadow and composition. Noah listened and watched his daughter come alive in a way she hadn't since Claire left, and he made a decision. After dropping Ellie at home with instructions to start her homework, Noah drove to the library. He'd never Googled Claire Monroe, had barely thought to, trusting his gut and the steady rhythm of their growing friendship. Now he typed Vivian Sterling into the search bar. The results were overwhelming. Hundreds of articles, photographs from galas and magazine covers, a Forbes profile, TED Talk, business interviews. She was exactly what the investigator had said, powerful, wealthy, untouchable. But in every photo, she looked distant, controlled. Nothing like the woman who'd sat in his garage drinking bad coffee, or who'd knelt beside Ellie to admire a watercolor landscape. Noah read about her company, her reputation, her ruthless business acumen. He read about her parents, cold, ambitious people who'd raised a daughter in their image. He read about how she'd never married, had no children, reportedly worked 18-hour days and slept in her office more often than her penthouse. It was a life that looked impressive on paper and desperately lonely in practice. And then Noah found an article from 2 years ago about a car accident outside Philadelphia. The piece was brief, mentioning only that Sterling Global Design CEO Vivian Sterling had been involved in a single-car collision but survived with minor injuries. The date matched. The location matched. It had been her. Noah sat in the library parking lot for an hour, staring at his phone, trying to decide what to do with this information. He could do nothing. Let her stay in New York, let their brief intersection fade into memory, protect himself and Ellie from further heartbreak. Or he could do something insane. His phone buzzed, text from Bill at the hardware store. Kid just dropped this off for Ellie, said it came from New York. Noah drove to the hardware store, picked up a flat package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a note in Vivian's handwriting and something else. The note said, "For Ellie's birthday. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Keep drawing. The world needs your vision. V." The something else was an original pencil sketch by Mary Cassatt, a simple study of a young girl that must have cost more than Noah's house. He held it carefully, this priceless thing, and felt something shift in his chest. She was still thinking about them, still trying to help, even from a distance, still caring in the only way she knew how. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Noah took the sketch home, gave it to Ellie along with the note. She looked at it for a long time, then carefully hung it above her desk. "You should call her," Ellie said. "I don't have her number." "You could find it if you wanted to." Noah looked at his daughter, this wise, wounded child who'd already survived too much loss. "What if I call and she doesn't answer?" he asked. "Then at least you tried." The next morning, Noah closed the garage, told Ellie to pack a bag, and made a phone call to the one contact number he could find for Sterling Global Design. "Sterling Global, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with Vivian Sterling." "Ms. Sterling doesn't take unsolicited calls. If you'd like to leave a message, tell her Noah Bennett is calling. From Willow Creek. A pause. Please hold. The hold lasted 3 minutes. Then a different voice came on the line, sharp and professional. This is Marcus Chen, COO of Sterling Global. Ms. Sterling is unavailable. May I take a message? No message. I'll be in New York tomorrow. I'd like to see her. Mr. Bennett, I'm afraid that's not possible. Ms. Sterling's schedule is completely booked. Then unbook it. Tell her if she doesn't see me, I'll wait in her lobby until security throws me out. And then I'll come back the next day and do it again. Another pause, longer this time. Noah could hear typing in the background. I'll see what I can do, Marcus said finally. You do that. Noah hung up, looked at Ellie sitting on the couch with her sketchbook. We're going to New York, he said. Ellie's face lit up like sunrise. To see Claire? To see Vivian, Noah corrected, and to get some answers. They took the train the next morning, Noah's heart hammering the entire ride. He'd worn his best shirt, the one he saved for church and funerals. Ellie had dressed carefully too, sensing the weight of the moment. Sterling Global Design occupied an entire building in Midtown Manhattan, all glass and steel and intimidating architecture. Noah stood on the sidewalk looking up at it, feeling like a mechanic from nowhere about to storm a castle. You ready, kiddo? He asked. Ellie took his hand. Let's go. The lobby was marble and money. Everything Willow Creek wasn't. A receptionist looked up as they approached, expression politely confused by their small-town clothes and uncertain posture. Noah Bennett, Noah said. I have an appointment with Vivian Sterling. The receptionist checked her computer, eyebrows rising. You're expected. 30th floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator. They rode up in silence, watching the city shrink below them through glass walls. At the 30th floor, the doors opened to reveal a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Vivian's executive assistant. Ms. Sterling is finishing a call, she said. Please wait here. She led them to a waiting area with furniture that probably cost more than Noah's truck. Ellie sat carefully on the edge of a chair, looking around with wide eyes. This is where she works? Ellie whispered. Apparently. It's so big. Yeah. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Noah was starting to think this was a mistake when a door opened and Marcus Chen appeared. Mr. Bennett? Miss Sterling will see you now. They were led down a hallway lined with awards and photographs, into a corner office that was more window than wall. And there, standing with her back to them, looking out at Manhattan's skyline, was Vivian Sterling. She wore a tailored suit instead of jeans. Her hair was pulled back severely. She stood like someone used to commanding rooms. But when she turned around and saw Ellie, everything carefully controlled about her expression crumbled. Hi, Claire, Ellie said softly. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Hi, sweetheart. Marcus cleared his throat. I'll give you privacy. He left, closing the door behind him. Noah and Vivian stood facing each other across an expanse of expensive carpet, and 2 months of silence and lies neither had fully untangled. You came, Vivian said. You've been paying for Ellie's art classes. Yes. And the grant that fixed my garage? Yes. Anything else I should know about? Vivian's jaw tightened. I set up a trust fund for Ellie's college education, and I've been covering the cost of her art supplies through the academy. And I bought the building your garage is in so your landlord can't raise your rent. Noah felt like he'd been punched. Why? Because I owe you my life and because I care about you, both of you. So you lied to us for months? Yes. No excuses, no deflection, just acknowledgement. Noah took a step closer. I know who you are now. I know you're Vivian Sterling. I know I pulled you out of that wreck 2 years ago. I know you spent all that time searching for me. I had to know, Vivian said quietly. I had to understand why someone would do that. Save a stranger and ask for nothing. So you came to Willow Creek pretending to be someone else. I didn't know how else to meet you. If I'd shown up as myself, with lawyers and contracts and gratitude wrapped in money, you would have hated it. You would have hated me. So instead you made us care about someone who didn't exist. Vivian flinched. Claire existed. Maybe she was the most real version of me that's ever existed. When I was with you, I wasn't performing. I wasn't being the CEO or the billionaire. I was just myself, the person I wanted to be. built on a lie. Yes. Ellie had been quiet through the exchange, watching the adults like a tennis match. Now she spoke up. Are you going to keep yelling? She asked. Or are you going to talk about what matters? Both adults turned to look at her. What matters, Elle? Noah asked. Whether Claire, Vivian, actually cares about us. Because if she does, the rest is just details. Vivian knelt in front of Ellie, eye level, tears streaming down her face now. I care about you more than I've cared about anything in my entire life, she said. Both of you. Coming to Willow Creek was supposed to be closure, a way to say thank you and move on. But instead I found something I didn't know I was looking for. A family. A life that felt real. And I ruined it by not being honest. So be honest now, Ellie said. Vivian looked up at Noah, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen. I'm in love with your father. I have been since the moment he told me about your mother's embroidered pillows and how grief doesn't have a timeline. I'm in love with you because you remind me that goodness still exists in the world. And I'm terrified because I don't know how to do this. I've spent my whole life building things, and I have no idea how to build a family. The office was silent except for the muffled sounds of traffic 30 floors below. Noah thought about the kiss in Brooklyn, about dinners at his kitchen table, about watching Vivian's face light up when Ellie showed her a new drawing, about the woman who'd drunk bad coffee in his garage and never complained, about someone powerful enough to move mountains who'd chosen to sit on a folding chair and just be present. I don't know if I can forgive you, he said finally. I understand. But I also don't know if I can walk away. Vivian stood slowly. What does that mean? It means you broke our trust, mine and Ellie's, and trust is the only thing I have to give. So if we do this, if we try to build something real, you can't lie to us again. Ever. No matter how complicated the truth is. I won't, Vivian said. I promise. And you can't try to fix our problems with money. We're not a charity case. We're people who deserve respect. I know. And if you're going to be in Ellie's life, you have to stay. No running when things get hard. No disappearing back to Manhattan because it's easier than dealing with real feelings. Vivian looked at Noah, then at Ellie, then back. I want to try, she said. I don't know how to do this, but I want to learn. If you'll teach me. Noah crossed the space between them, stopped close enough to see the tears on her cheeks, the hope and fear warring in her eyes. This is going to be messy, he said. I know. People are going to ask questions about who you are, why you're with a mechanic from nowhere. Let them ask. And Ellie comes first, always. If this doesn't work, if it hurts her, we're done. No second chances. I understand. Noah took Vivian's hands, felt them tremble in his. Then let's try, he said. And then he kissed her, right there in her corner office overlooking Manhattan, with his daughter watching and the whole complicated future spreading out before them like uncharted territory. When they pulled apart, Ellie was grinning. Does this mean we're keeping her? She asked. Noah laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuine joy. Yeah, kiddo, I think we are. Vivian wiped her eyes, mascara smudged, looking nothing like a polished CEO and everything like a woman who'd just been given something she didn't know she could have. I have to warn you, she said. My life is complicated. There are board meetings and investors and business obligations. I can't just abandon everything. We're not asking you to, Noah said. We're just asking you to be honest about it. I can do that. And maybe spend some time in Willow Creek. Let people meet the real you. Vivian smiled through tears. The town is going to have a lot of questions when they find out Claire Monroe is actually a billionaire. Let them ask, Noah echoed her earlier words. We'll figure it out together. Ellie tugged on Vivian's sleeve. Can we see your apartment? I want to know where you live when you're not pretending to be normal. Vivian laughed, the sound unguarded and genuine. It's not very interesting. Just a lot of windows and expensive furniture I never use. Still want to see it. So they left the office, Vivian giving brief instructions to her assistant about canceled meetings and rescheduled calls. They took a car to her penthouse, and Noah watched Ellie's eyes go wide at the marble, and the art, and the view that stretched for miles. But he also saw how empty it was, how unlived in, like a magazine spread instead of a home. You really stay here? Ellie asked, voice echoing in the vast space. Sometimes, Vivian admitted. Lately I've been staying at hotels near the office. It's easier. It's lonely, Ellie corrected. Vivian looked at the child, then at Noah, then around at the beautiful hollow space she'd built. Yes, she said quietly. It is. They spent the afternoon together, eating takeout on furniture that had never been properly used, talking about how to make this impossible thing work. Vivian admitted she'd need to tell her board that there would be press interest, that Noah and Ellie's lives would change. Noah listened and held her hand and promised they'd face it together, because that's what people did when they loved each other. They chose messy and complicated over safe and alone. As sunset painted the city in shades of amber and rose, Ellie fell asleep on the couch, sketchbook open on her lap. Noah and Vivian sat by the window watching lights blink on across Manhattan. I don't know what happens next, Vivian admitted. Nobody ever does, Noah said. That's the scary part. I've spent my whole life controlling outcomes, planning for every contingency. How's that working for you? Vivian smiled. Terribly. Then maybe try something different. Like what? Like trusting that some things are worth the risk of not knowing how they end. Vivian leaned against him, felt the solid warmth of his shoulder, the steadiness she'd been searching for without knowing it. I love you, she said. The words felt foreign and perfect. I know, Noah replied. I love you too. Even though you're impossible, and you lied, and you have terrible taste in coffee. It wasn't that bad. It was horrible. They sat in comfortable silence, two people from different worlds trying to build a bridge between them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be arguments and adjustments and moments when the distance between billionaire and mechanic felt insurmountable. But Ellie had been right about one thing. The part that mattered was real. Everything else was just details. The news broke 3 days later. Not because Vivian planned it, but because a business journalist spotted her having breakfast with Noah and Ellie at a small cafe in Brooklyn. The photograph that appeared online showed Vivian Sterling, Billionaire CEO, laughing at something a bearded man in flannel was saying while a young girl sketched in a notebook beside them. The caption read, Sterling's secret family? Within hours, it was everywhere. Vivian's phone exploded with calls from her board, her PR team, investors demanding explanations. Marcus called 6 times before she finally answered. Vivian, what the hell is going on? I'm having breakfast with people I care about. The internet thinks you have a secret husband and child. Then the internet is half right. This isn't funny. The board is convening an emergency meeting. They want to know if this affects your ability to lead the company. Vivian looked across the table at Noah, who'd gone tense the moment her phone started buzzing. At Ellie, who was pretending not to listen while clearly absorbing every word. Tell the board I'll address them tomorrow, Vivian said. And Marcus? They don't get a vote on my personal life. She hung up. Noah set down his coffee cup carefully. That sounded bad. It's fine. Vivian, it's fine, she repeated, but her hands were shaking slightly. I knew this would happen. I just thought we'd have more time. Ellie looked up from her sketchbook. Are people going to be mean to us? The question was so direct, so unchildishly perceptive, that Vivian felt her heart crack. Some people might be, she admitted. Some people won't understand why someone like me would be with someone like your dad. They'll say things that aren't kind. Because Dad's not rich? Because people are small-minded and cruel sometimes. Noah reached across the table, took Vivian's hand. We can stop this right now. If it's going to hurt your company, hurt what you've built, we can step back. Go back to how things were. No, Vivian's voice was firm. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending the only thing that matters is the empire. If the board has a problem with my personal life, they can find a new CEO. You'd really walk away from it? Vivian looked at him, this man who'd saved her life without knowing it, who'd shown her what it meant to be decent without calculation. For you and Ellie? In a heartbeat. The breakfast ended with a plan. Noah and Ellie would return to Willow Creek while Vivian dealt with the fallout in New York. They'd talk every day. She'd come to Pennsylvania on weekends. They'd take this slow, figure it out as they went. It was reasonable, practical. It lasted exactly 4 days. Because on Friday afternoon, while Noah was replacing a timing belt and Ellie was at art class, a black SUV pulled up to Bennett Auto Works. A woman in an expensive suit got out, looked around the garage with barely concealed disdain, and approached Noah. "Mr. Bennett, I'm Jennifer Walsh, representing the Sterling Global Design Board of Directors. I'd like to discuss your relationship with our CEO. Noah straightened, wiped his hands on a rag. "I'm not sure that's any of your business." "It becomes our business when it affects shareholder value." Jennifer's smile was cold, calculated. "Ms. Sterling has been distracted for months, missing meetings, making erratic decisions, delegating responsibilities she used to handle personally. The board has concerns." "About what?" "About whether someone in your position is taking advantage of her emotionally vulnerable state." The implication hung in the air, ugly and clear. Noah felt anger rise hot in his chest. "You think I'm after her money, aren't you? A small-town mechanic struggling to make ends meet suddenly connected to a billionaire who's been acting out of character. It's a convenient narrative. Get out of my garage." "Mr. Bennett, I said get out, before I throw you out." Jennifer's expression hardened. "The board is prepared to make you an offer, $2 million to end your relationship with Ms. Sterling and sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's more than generous for someone in your circumstances." Noah laughed, the sound bitter. "You really think everyone has a price?" "In my experience? Yes." "Then you've been dealing with the wrong people." Noah pointed to the door. "Tell your board that Vivian Sterling is the smartest, strongest, most capable person I've ever met. And if they can't see that, if they think she needs protecting from someone who actually cares about her, then they're the ones who don't deserve her." Jennifer studied him for a long moment, reassessing. "You're serious?" "Completely. You understand that if you continue this relationship, Ms. Sterling's position becomes untenable. The board will vote to remove her." "Then they'll remove her. That's her choice to make, not yours or mine." "You'd really let her destroy everything she's built?" "I'd let her choose what matters most to her, something you people clearly never have." Jennifer left without another word. Noah stood in his garage, hands still trembling with rage, and immediately called Vivian. "They came here," he said when she answered. "Your board offered me $2 million to leave you alone." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "What did you say?" "I told them to go to hell." "Noah, I'm not going to be the reason you lose your company, Vivian, but I'm also not going to let them buy me off like I'm some problem to be solved with money." "The board meets Monday," Vivian said. "They're going to try to force me out. So fight them. And if I lose, then we figure out what comes next, together." Vivian was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, like the CEO who'd built an empire from nothing. "I have an idea," she said, "but you're going to think I'm crazy." "I already think you're crazy. Tell me anyway." The board meeting convened Monday morning in Sterling Global's main conference room. 16 directors sat around an enormous table, Jennifer Walsh presenting her findings on Vivian's recent erratic behavior and concerning personal entanglements. Vivian sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, hair pulled back, every inch the powerful CEO they expected. "Miss Walsh has raised legitimate concerns," the board chairman said. "Your performance has been compromised. You've delegated critical decisions, missed important meetings. The Bergstrom deal nearly fell apart because you were unreachable." "The Bergstrom deal closed successfully," Vivian pointed out, "with terms more favorable than projected." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Richard?" "The point is that you've allowed personal matters to interfere with your professional obligations. This man you've become involved with. His name is Noah Bennett. This Noah Bennett is a distraction we can't afford. The board has voted. We're asking you to choose the company or the relationship." Vivian stood slowly, placed her hands on the table, looked at each board member in turn. "I built this company from nothing," she said. "When I started Sterling Global 20 years ago, it was me and a single client working out of a studio apartment. I grew it into a $3 billion empire through 18-hour days and sacrificing everything that wasn't work. Relationships, health, any semblance of a normal life. And you know what I learned? Silence. That none of it matters if you don't have people you care about." Noah Bennett is a mechanic who saved my life 2 years ago and asked for nothing in return. He's raising a daughter alone while running a small business and still finds time to be kind to strangers. He makes me remember why I started this company in the first place, to create beautiful things, not just to accumulate wealth. That's very touching, Jennifer said, but it doesn't address our concerns. I'm not finished, Vivian's voice cut like steel. You want me to choose between the company and my personal life? Fine, I choose both. I'm restructuring my role. Marcus Chen will become CEO. I'll remain as creative director and chairman of the board, focusing on design and long-term strategy while reducing my operational responsibilities. The room erupted. Board members spoke over each other, objections flying. Richard banged his gavel. This is unacceptable. We didn't agree to this. You don't have to agree. I own 51% of voting shares. This isn't a democracy. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Vivian gathered her materials. Marcus is more than qualified. The company will be fine, better than fine, because I'll finally be able to focus on what I'm actually good at, creating, instead of drowning in administrative tasks I've always hated. And if we vote no confidence, Jennifer challenged, then I sell my shares, take my creative team, and start a new company. Your choice. The threat hung in the air. Everyone in that room knew Vivian Sterling could do exactly what she promised. She was the brand. Without her, Sterling Global would lose half its value overnight. Richard looked at the other board members, saw the calculation in their eyes. We'll need time to discuss this, he said. You have until Friday. I'll be in Pennsylvania. Vivian walked to the door, paused. And for the record, Noah Bennett is the best thing that's ever happened to me. If you can't accept that, I don't need you on my board. She left 16 stunned executives in her wake. Marcus caught up with her in the hallway. That was insane. I know. You just bet your entire company on a mechanic from Pennsylvania. I bet my company on being happy. There's a difference. Marcus shook his head, but he was smiling. For what it's worth. I think Noah's good for you. You've been more creative in the last 6 months than the previous 5 years combined. You'll make a good CEO. I'll make a different CEO. That's probably what this company needs. Vivian hugged him, surprising them both. Then she walked out of Sterling Global headquarters, got in her car, and drove straight to Pennsylvania. She arrived in Willow Creek just as Ellie was getting out of school. The girl saw Vivian's car, screamed, and ran across the parking lot. You're here! You're actually here! Vivian caught her, swung her around, felt something settle in her chest that had been displaced for too long. I'm here, she confirmed, and I'm staying. For how long? How does permanently sound? Ellie's eyes went wide. Really? Really, I'm moving to Willow Creek, part-time at least. I'll still have to go to New York for work sometimes, but this is going to be home now. Does Dad know? Not yet. Want to help me surprise him? They drove to the garage together, Ellie chattering the entire way about art class and her friends, and whether Vivian had ever tried the pie at the diner because it was really good, even though Mrs. Patterson made it and she wasn't the best cook. Noah was in the garage office doing paperwork when they walked in. He looked up, saw Vivian, and his expression went through several emotions at once. Surprise, hope, caution. Hey, he said carefully. Wasn't expecting you until the weekend. Change of plans. Vivian set down her bag. I restructured the company. Marcus is CEO now. I'm staying on as creative director, which means a lot more flexibility and a lot less corporate politics. You... what? I quit. Sort of. The parts I hated, anyway, kept the parts I love. Vivian crossed to him, took his hands. I meant what I said, Noah. You and Ellie matter more than any boardroom, so I'm choosing you, if that's still what you want. Noah pulled her close, kissed her forehead. That's the craziest thing you've ever done. I know. And the bravest. Also probably true. I'm going to do homework, Ellie announced, making herself scarce with the tactical awareness of a child who'd learned to read adult emotional cues early. When they were alone, Noah held Vivian at arm's length, studying her face. You sure about this? He asked. You built that company. It's your whole life. It was my whole life, past tense. Now I want something different. What if you get bored? What if small-town life isn't enough? What if it's exactly enough? What if I've been chasing the wrong things for 20 years and I finally figured out what actually matters? Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised her. I sold the garage. Vivian's heart stopped. What? After your board tried to bribe me, I started thinking. About what you said in New York. About choosing messy and complicated over safe and alone. About trying something different. He paused. There's a garage for sale in a town about an hour from here. Bigger space, better equipment, room to expand, and the local high school has a vocational program that needs instructors. They asked if I'd be interested in teaching mechanics to kids who can't afford college. Noah, I've been playing it safe for 3 years, keeping my world small so it can't hurt me. But you showed up and made everything bigger and scarier and better. So I'm taking a risk too. Vivian felt tears sting her eyes. When do you move? End of the month, if you're still planning to be around. I'm planning to be around for a long time. Good, because Ellie already picked out which bedroom she wants in the new house, and she made me promise the third bedroom would be yours for when you're in town. The third bedroom? Well, eventually maybe we could share one, but I figure we should probably take this slow, do things right. Vivian laughed through tears. You want to date me properly? After everything? I want to build something real, not rushed, not built on lies or desperation, just us, figuring it out together. I love you, Vivian said. I know, you restructured your entire company for me, kind of gave it away. I restructured it for me. You just gave me the courage. They stood in the garage that had been the center of Noah's world for years, holding each other while the late afternoon sun slanted through the windows and turned everything golden. This is going to be weird, isn't it? Noah said. The town's going to have opinions about the billionaire dating the mechanic. Let them have opinions. And the press is going to be insufferable. Probably. And Ellie's going to need therapy at some point because her father's girlfriend is famous, and that's weird for a kid. We'll get her the best therapist money can buy. Noah smiled. There's the billionaire coming out. I'm never going to be normal, Noah. I'm always going to have too much money and too many resources and a tendency to try to fix problems by throwing cash at them. But I'm working on it. I know you are. He kissed her gently. And I'm going to keep calling you out when you slip. I'm counting on it. The transition wasn't seamless. There were hard days. Days when the culture gap between them felt insurmountable. Days when Vivian's instinct to control everything clashed with Noah's need for independence. Days when paparazzi showed up in Willow Creek and made Ellie cry because they were taking pictures of her without permission. But there were good days too. Days when Vivian taught a workshop at Ellie's art academy, sharing techniques she'd learned from masters. Days when Noah came home to find Vivian had attempted to cook dinner and burned everything, but they ate it anyway, laughing. Days when the three of them drove to the new house and planned where furniture would go, which walls Ellie could paint with murals, where Noah would build the deck he'd always wanted. Vivian learned to let go of control, to trust that not everything needed to be managed or optimized, that sometimes the best moments were the unplanned ones, impromptu picnics, last-minute movie nights, Ellie teaching her to embroider because you need to know how to make something with your hands that isn't just design concepts. Noah learned to accept help without seeing it as charity, to let Vivian contribute to their life without feeling like he was failing as a provider, to understand that her wealth wasn't about power over him, but about opportunities they could share. Ellie thrived. Her art got better, more confident, more mature. The scholarship Vivian had established, now openly acknowledged, sent her to a summer intensive program in New York, where she studied with professional artists and came home buzzing with new techniques and ideas. 6 months after Vivian restructured her life, she stood in the kitchen of their new house. Noah's name on the deed, both of them on the mortgage, Ellie's artwork covering every wall, making coffee while Noah grilled pancakes and their daughter sketched the morning light coming through the windows. "This is nice," Vivian said. Noah looked over at her, smiled. "Yeah? Yeah, domestic, normal, nice. You miss New York?" "Sometimes. The galleries, the museums, the energy. But Marcus sends me designs to review every week. I consult on major projects. I get to do the creative work I love without the parts I hated. It's better this way." Ellie looked up from her sketchbook. "Are you guys going to get married?" The question came out of nowhere, startling them both. What? Noah nearly dropped the spatula. Married. You know, like people do when they love each other. Vivian and Noah looked at each other across the kitchen. They'd been dancing around the question for months, both afraid to push too hard too fast. Would you want that? Vivian asked Ellie. If your dad and I got married? Duh, then you'd really be part of our family instead of just Dad's girlfriend. I'm already part of your family, sweetheart. But it would be official. We'd all have the same last name and everything. Noah cleared his throat. That's not exactly how it works, Elle. People don't always take the same name anymore. But they could if they wanted to. Right, Vivian? Vivian set down her coffee cup, crossed to where Ellie sat, knelt beside her chair. If your dad asked me to marry him, she said carefully, what would you think about that? I think I'd be really happy, and I think Mom would be happy too. The mention of Sarah made Noah's expression go complicated. He set down the spatula, came to join them. You think so? He asked his daughter softly. I know so. Mom wanted you to be happy, Dad. She told me before she died. She made me promise I'd make sure you didn't stay sad forever. Noah's eyes got bright. She said that? Ellie nodded. She said you were the best dad in the world and you deserved to smile again, and Vivian makes you smile. They were all crying now, the three of them in the kitchen with pancakes burning on the stove and the morning sun painting everything gold. I should turn those off, Noah said, not moving. Probably, Vivian agreed, not moving either. They let the pancakes burn, ordered breakfast from the diner instead, spent the morning talking about Sarah, about the ways she was still part of their family even though she was gone, about how love didn't replace love. It just added to it. And in the afternoon, while Ellie was at a friend's house, Noah asked Vivian to take a drive with him. They ended up at the place where the wreck had happened, the oak tree still standing beside the highway, bark scarred but surviving. This is where it started, Noah said, standing at the roadside, where I pulled you out. I know. I came back here once, after I found out who you were. Tried to imagine what you saw that day. I saw someone who needed help, that's all. Didn't matter who you were or what you were worth. You were just a person who needed saving. And you saved me. Without thinking. Without expecting anything. Noah turned to look at her. And then you spent 2 years trying to find me so you could say thank you. So I could understand why someone would do that. Did you? Understand? Vivian took his hand. I understand that some people are just good, built that way. And I understand that I was drowning in success and you threw me a lifeline without knowing it. Funny way to throw a lifeline, lying about your name and moving to my town. I panicked. I didn't know how to meet you without all the money and power getting in the way. So you became someone else. I became who I wanted to be. And you loved her anyway. Noah pulled Vivian close, both of them standing at the place where their story began. I love all of you, he said. Claire and Vivian, the billionaire and the woman who burns toast, all the complicated pieces. That's good, because I come with a lot of complicated pieces. I noticed. He pulled back slightly, reached into his pocket. I have something for you. It wasn't a ring, it was the carpenter's pencil. The one that had fallen from his pocket 2 years ago and changed everything. How did you get this? Vivian breathed. Called your assistant, told her what I needed. She had it couriered from your desk drawer. Noah placed it in her hands. You kept it all this time, held on to it like it meant something. It did mean something. It was the only piece of you I had. Well, now you have the real thing, messy and complicated and occasionally covered in motor oil. Vivian laughed, holding the pencil like it was precious. Is this your way of proposing? This is my way of saying I want to build a life with you. Officially. Ellie wants you to be her family. I want you to be my family. So yeah, Vivian Sterling. Will you marry me? You don't have a ring. I have a carpenter's pencil that meant enough for you to keep it for 2 years. Figured that was more meaningful than a diamond. Vivian looked at the pencil, at the man holding her, at the scarred oak tree that had been the unlikely beginning of everything. Yes, she said. 1,000 times yes. Noah kissed her there on the roadside where he'd saved her life, where she'd been reborn into a different kind of existence, where the worst moment had led to the best thing. One condition, Vivian said when they pulled apart. What's that? We get actual rings too, because I want everyone to know you're taken. Possessive. Completely. They drove back to the house and told Ellie, who screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard. She immediately started planning the wedding, sketching ideas for decorations and dresses and flower arrangements with the intensity of a professional event coordinator. Can I be the maid of honor? She asked. You can be whatever you want, Vivian said. Can we have the wedding here in the backyard? Noah and Vivian looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Not a big society event in Manhattan, not a corporate spectacle, just something small and real and theirs. In the backyard sounds perfect, Noah said. The wedding happened 3 months later on a clear October afternoon. It was small, intimate, just close friends and the people who mattered. Marcus came from New York with a few of Vivian's designers. Bill from the hardware store stood as Noah's best man. Ellie wore a dress she'd helped design, decorated with hand-embroidered flowers that represented her mother's memory woven into this new beginning. Vivian wore simple white, no designer label, no couture, just a dress that made her feel beautiful. They wrote their own vows. Noah went first, voice steady but emotional. Vivian, you came into my life disguised as someone else, but you showed me who you really were in all the ways that mattered. You taught me that it's okay to take risks, that building something new doesn't mean forgetting what we've lost, that love can come in the most unexpected packages, and when it does, you grab it with both hands and don't let go. I promise to support your dreams, challenge your assumptions, and remind you when you're trying to buy your way out of problems that have to be solved with patience and time. I promise to love you, Vivian Sterling, for exactly who you are. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Then Vivian took a breath and spoke. Noah, 2 years ago you saved my life without knowing who I was or what I could give you in return. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That simple act of decency haunted me because I'd forgotten that people like you existed. People who are good without calculation, who give without expecting, who love without conditions. You and Ellie taught me what family means, what home feels like, what it means to build a life based on something other than achievement and accumulation. I promise to keep learning from you, to keep trying to be the person you saw in me even when I was lying about my name, to love Ellie like she's mine, and to love you like you're the miracle you are. The officiant pronounced them married. They kissed while their small gathered family cheered. Ellie threw flower petals that she'd pressed herself. And somewhere in the midst of it all, Vivian caught sight of the carpenter's pencil displayed on the mantel inside the house, next to a photo of Sarah Bennett smiling, the old and the new existing together. The reception was simple. Barbecue and music and dancing on the grass. Marcus gave a speech about how Vivian had terrified him for years, and he was glad someone had finally made her human. Bill told embarrassing stories about Noah as a teenager. Ellie performed a dramatic reading of the story of how her dad had saved Vivian's life, embellishing details for maximum effect. As the sun set and the party wound down, Vivian and Noah stood at the edge of their property, watching the last of the light fade. We did it, Noah said. We did. You okay with all this? The small wedding, the small town, the regular life? Vivian leaned against him. I've never been better. You know what I realized? What's that? All those years building an empire, I was trying to prove I mattered, that I was worth something, but I was looking for validation in all the wrong places. And now? Now I know I matter because I make Ellie smile, because I make you happy, because I finally figured out that the only empire worth building is the one at home. Noah kissed the top of her head. That's very philosophical for someone who used to work 18-hour days. I contain multitudes. Yes, you do. They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge. Inside the house, Ellie was showing her artwork to wedding guests, explaining techniques with the confidence of someone who knew her gift was valued. You think she'll be okay? Vivian asked. Long term? With all of this? She's already better than okay. You gave her opportunities I never could have. Not just the art supplies and classes, but the confidence that what she creates matters. She would have been brilliant anyway. Maybe. But you helped her believe it. Vivian thought about the girl she'd first met, sketching silently in a garage, carrying sadness like a weight. about the confident young artist she was becoming, still sad sometimes, but no longer drowning in it. "We're going to mess this up sometimes," Vivian said. "The parenting thing. I have no idea what I'm doing." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." Together. I like the sound of that. A year later, on Ellie's 12th birthday, 3 things happened. First, her artwork was accepted into a regional youth exhibition, the youngest artist ever selected. She stood in the gallery beside her watercolor of the old oak tree where her father had saved Vivian's life, explaining to reporters how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Second, Noah's vocational program at the high school won a state award for excellence in alternative education. He gave a speech about how everyone deserved to learn skills that could build a future, not just kids who could afford traditional college. Third, Vivian's new design book, a collaboration with young artists from rural communities, showcasing how talent existed everywhere if people bothered to look, hit the bestseller list. They celebrated with pizza and ice cream at the house, nothing fancy, just the 3 of them and a few of Ellie's friends from school. That night, after the friends had gone home and Ellie had gone to bed, Vivian and Noah sat on their deck under the stars. "You know what today was?" Vivian asked. "Elle's birthday. Also the 3-year anniversary of the day you pulled me out of that wreck." Noah was quiet for a moment. "I didn't realize. I always remember. October 15th, the day my life split into before and after." "Mine too, I guess. I just didn't know it at the time." Vivian took his hand. "Thank you. For saving me that day. For saving me every day since. You saved yourself, Vivian. You did the hard work of changing your life. But you showed me it was possible." They sat in comfortable silence, years of history and hope stretching between them. Inside, Ellie was probably sketching in bed, the way she always did before sleep, creating beauty from graphite and paper, the gift her mother had given her nurtured by the family she'd built from broken pieces. On the mantel sat 2 pencils side by side. One old carpenter's pencil, worn smooth with use. One new drawing pencil, sharp and full of potential. One from loss. One from rescue. Together, they looked like the beginning of something permanent, like home. The story could have ended there, neat and complete. But life wasn't tidy. It was messy and ongoing and full of complications that couldn't be resolved in a single moment. So instead, the story continued. Noah's teaching program expanded to 3 high schools. Vivian launched a foundation supporting young artists from rural communities. Ellie grew into a teenager with opinions and attitude and extraordinary talent. There were fights about money because old patterns died hard, and Vivian still occasionally tried to solve problems with her checkbook. About parenting because they'd come from different worlds with different ideas about raising kids. About how much time Vivian should spend in New York versus Willow Creek. But there was also laughter. Sunday mornings making pancakes together, the 3 of them moving around the kitchen in practice choreography. Road trips to galleries and museums, Ellie sketching in the back seat while her parents held hands in the front. Quiet evenings when they'd all work on their own projects in companionable silence. Noah reading, Vivian designing, Ellie creating. They built a life that wasn't perfect but was theirs. And on nights when Vivian couldn't sleep, when the old ambition whispered that she'd given up too much, she'd walk through the house and see the evidence of what she'd gained. Ellie's artwork covering the walls, Noah's work boots by the door, the lived-in warmth of a home that was actually lived in. She'd remember the woman she'd been 3 years ago, powerful and successful and profoundly alone. And she'd know she'd made the right choice, because empires could be built and lost, fortunes made and squandered. But family, real family, chosen family, the kind built from honesty and risk and staying when leaving would be easier, that was the only thing worth holding on to. Sometimes the person you save becomes the one who saves you back. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to build a life with them that's bigger and better and more beautiful than anything you could have built alone. That was the real ending. Not a moment, not a wedding or a revelation, but a choice made every day to keep choosing each other, to keep building, to keep believing that the best things in life come not from careful planning, but from taking the risk of saying yes when everything logical says run. Noah Bennett had pulled Vivian Sterling from a wrecked car without knowing who she was. Vivian Sterling had found Noah Bennett and lied about who she was. And together they'd built something honest from those dishonest beginnings. A family, a home, a life. Not perfect, but real. And in the end, that was all that mattered.